Chapter 1904. This void. All right, he had to sigh again. This void, this bunch of unreliable fellows. He always felt that the power they left behind was used to deal with their own people. As expected, the worst thing about the Order was that they would cause internal strife when they had nothing better to do. Even they themselves. All right, he knew that this had nothing to do with them, but he just couldn't help but feel that way. First, they found a bunch of ingrates and stabbed them in the back. Then, they even messed up the world of order. After who knows how many eras later, those ingrates still wanted to destroy the things they left behind. Everything that could be taken away was taken away, and everything that couldn't be taken away was torn down on the spot. After everything was done, all that was left behind was a pile of scrap metal. How exciting. Yes, it was really exciting. For the Order, this was a little too exciting. They took away the power that the origin heavenly God left behind for the world of order and even used it for their own use. This was just increasing the difficulty out of nowhere. Forget it. He didn't have anything good to say anyway. After all, the unreliability of the Order was engraved in their souls. Compared to pointing their swords at their enemies, they preferred to point their swords at themselves. He was just joking and complaining, but he knew that it wasn't the case. He was just complaining. At this moment, he could feel a lump of black ink forming the word danger flashing crazily above his head. He had to complain, or else he wouldn't have anything to complain about when the time came. Speaking of which, the suffering of the celestial realm was probably engraved in the environment of the void of order. Perhaps when the origin heavenly God and the others took the celestial realm to do something, this ending had already been decided. Looking at the celestial realm for the next few dozen eras, there was basically not a single day of peace. Big and small problems, whether it was the problems of the celestial realm or the problems brought by the outsiders, were constantly happening. The celestial realm itself had been flattened several times because of this. Others had their share of the blame, and so had he. However, he had already gotten used to it. The stage of this era had yet to shift to the celestial realm. He would just let that unlucky world enjoy itself for a while. Although, he hoped that the battle would not spread to that world. If this battle between order and chaos eventually spread to the celestial realm, that would mean that the ending would still be the same. Right? Speaking of which, I seem to have inadvertently mentioned the underworld's goal just now. Combining the information obtained and the opinions discussed before, it seems that it could be roughly divided into two parts. The general goal of the underworld was to destroy the order void under the command of them, and then head to the divine realm to remove some invisible seal to release them before throwing out the chaos concept body. Without the protection of the heavenly God of origin, the order void was unstoppable against the rampaging chaos forces and was immediately doomed. However, even with the general goal in front of them, the underworld was happy to slack off. They did not act immediately, instead entrusting the matter to the former divine shadow while they worked on something else in the order void. It seemed that the general goal was not as important to them as the other goal. As for the minor goal, it was the goal of reshaping the void that was mentioned at the very beginning. He had not thrown that idea away even now, with the reason being to find the abyssal death mist spawn in the little girl's world, as well as the time she was trapped by the abyssal death mist. There is no need to talk about that since the minor goal had been mentioned many times, it was just a general goal that allowed them to better understand the underworld's operations. After learning that they had betrayed the underworld, they were busy slacking off. As expected, the major goal was to reshape the void. He had not thrown that idea away even until now, with the reason being to find the abyssal death mist spawn in the little girl's world, as well as the time she was trapped by the abyssal death mist. There was no need to talk about that since the minor goal had been mentioned many times, it was just a general goal that allowed them to gain a better understanding of the underworld's operations. After learning that they had betrayed the underworld, they were busy slacking off. As expected, the minor goal was the goal of reshaping the void. He had not thrown that idea away even now, with the reason being to find the abyssal death mist spawn in the little girl's world, as well as the time she was trapped by the abyssal death mist. There was no need to talk about that since the minor goal had been mentioned many times, it was just a general goal that allowed them to gain a better understanding of the underworld's operations. After learning that they had betrayed the underworld, right now, we don't have to worry about the divine realm encountering enemies in secret. The underworld isn't a concept of chaos, and the front line of the void isn't an open door of order. This time, the war between order and chaos is only going on at a thin border. Unless we destroy the front line of the void, we won't be able to get to the divine realm. So, have you guys come to a conclusion? Yin Nuashing slowly regained his senses as he listened to them speak one sentence after another. He couldn't help but ask. The youth glanced at him and shrugged. I don't know, not much. The soul-subduing ring was placed in the void of order in the 34th era, close to the 35th era. After that, there was no news at all. It's not easy for us to find the children, or for the children to shout a few words to the outside world. Under such circumstances, how could it be ransacked by them? Well, I can't imagine at all. Yin Nuashing responded with an O upon hearing that. He briefly sorted out the time. In short, the time when the soul-suppressing ring was invaded was only 40 years ago, right? At the end of your battle, you did indeed cut off the connection between them and the De Yuan realm. They can't come out and jump around as they please anymore. Then, it wouldn't have happened after that. The youth nodded. That's true. Then, here's the question. Yin Nuashing put his hands on the table. At the end of the battle, did you guys encounter the bombardment of your own creations of order? The youth was stunned for a moment. He looked around and exchanged glances with everyone. After getting a negative answer, the light on his body suddenly flickered. No. So, this is the escape route that them left behind? Stealing from us and using it to pave his own way out. What a guy. I've never seen such a shameless person. Yin Nuashing immediately thought of something. Digging up other people's ancestral graves as their own. Although that wasn't exactly what it meant, that was the logic. What those ghosts did was not much different from this. This wave, after being casually stolen, after being done, they still let the sheep charge at them. It was a bit ridiculous, too ridiculous. She looked at him and whispered, How much is left? There's not much left. Yin Nuashing spread his hands and sighed worriedly. Currently, the things that are known to exist are the broken pieces of the Fortress of Origin. According to your children, it should be a complete set of the Fortress of Origin, and then there's the Staff of Origin. Let me think. It seems that there's nothing left. I'm not too sure if they left anything behind when they tidied up your things. Even if there is, it's probably not much. The youth was stunned. Isn't it clear that there are only 2 things left? The other things have already been taken out and used, but they're nothing special. Yin Nuashing interrupted himself and pondered for a moment. Maybe it's nothing special to them, so they left it behind. It's all related to the legacy power that you left behind. It's a little useful to us, but to them, the use is probably next to nothing. Oh, it's the things that were left behind for the children to continue to guide and strengthen the legacy. They didn't take those things away. Either they couldn't take them away, or they didn't want them. After all, that bunch of heartless ingrates had long looked down on their own power. The girl sighed and waved her hand. Personally, I feel that they didn't want more. There's something else. It's a creation used to suppress the power of chaos. But this thing was only a half-finished product, so it wasn't destroyed or taken away. At this point, Yin Nuashing's mind suddenly lit up. Hiss, if that's the case, I think I know why the garbage dump is filled with half-finished products and scrap metal. They were either torn into pieces by them, or they were half-finished products in the first place, and just so happened to avoid being swept away by them. Hey, why is it so sad? The heavenly gods of origin. For a moment, they didn't know whether to complain about how sad it was or complain about how the soul-suppressing ring had been turned into a garbage dump. Originally, they didn't want to make a garbage dump, but who knew that such a sad thing would happen later on? There was nothing they could do. Ahem, then it's my turn to ask. Yin Nuashing coughed lightly. She clenched her fists and pressed them against the table. She took a deep breath and said, How much power did them use to escape? I'm talking about the power in the soul-suppressing ring. Well, the girl tilted her head and let out a voice that sounded like a bitter laugh. Judging from what you said, they took away the defensive power of the entire defense line of order. The defense line of order's concept-level defensive net, the energy source, the staff of origin. You can think of it as they taking away the entire defensive node of the fortress of origin, except for the fortress of origin. Yinwashing said calmly, "Look at me when you talk. I can hear what you're implying. Hurry up and tell me." Since even the soul-suppressing ring has been pried open, well, there's no guarantee that other places won't have something strange like lost items. Yinwashing turned to look at the young man. Back then, you didn't actually want to leave power for the world of order, but for them, right? Although the reality is terrible, we did leave a lot of backups for the world of order. It's just that we don't know how they were able to find the things that we left behind. Theoretically speaking, it shouldn't be like that. That should be left behind for a specific person. It should either be a pure, high-life form of order that is guided by the origin, or a life form with pure energy of the origin. They have already turned themselves into something that is neither human nor ghost. The power of order in their bodies is not pure, and they have already abandoned our power. So how could they be able to open the soul-suppressing ring? That's reality. Denying it is meaningless unless you say that it was the chaos concept entity who smashed the door. I know that the chaos concept entity would have destroyed the door directly instead of leaving a pile of rubbish to give me a headache. But let me finish. Yinwashing coughed softly as she sorted out her thoughts. Didn't they volunteer to join the chaotic void? They must have been involved with the chaos concept entity before joining, just like the underworld. Then perhaps they used the power of chaos to destroy the door of the soul-suppressing ring. Is that possible? The power of the chaos concept entity could definitely smash our door, but as I said, they had already abandoned their own power. That's not surprising at all. Everything who had received our power would be tainted with highly concentrated chaos energy when they meet again on the battlefield, similar to the chaos concept entity. The young man shook his head. Secondly, the chaos concept entity could not find where those things were. Unless the defenses of those hidden places were loose and energy leaks appeared, they would not be able to find them. The defenses we set up are enough to ensure that there would not be any natural loosening of the defenses for dozens of years. I have a guess about that. Yinwashing stroked her chest for a moment before taking out a teacup and placing it on the table. Look, does this look familiar? This is... The young man's words faltered, and Yinwashing could sense that the heavenly origin god's expression had become rather awkward, as if he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is a little toy that we left in the soul suppression bracelet. It's not just a teacup. There are pots and pans. Sooner or later, I'm going to scavenge the void and pick up the pots and ladles you left behind to cook a big meal. Can you explain why you put those things in there? Yinwashing rolled her eyes. Seeing that they were all scratching their heads awkwardly and not intending to answer, she continued, "These are the things you left behind. They have your power, your presence, and your mark. Can you use them to find the door?" The young man pondered for a moment before looking up. "You don't say. That's possible." The possibility is not small. However, there's a premise. It's impossible to find the door with just one or two of the things we left behind. Those are the defenses we left behind. There are dozens of layers of defenses, and at least 5 or 6 of the things we left behind. Furthermore, they belong to different people. Only then would there be a small chance of finding the escape routes we left behind in the void. The probability is really not very high. However, the flames of war that once spread across the entire Grand Yuan realm and the void of order were enough for them to spread their footprints everywhere. The long war also gave them enough time to find the things you left behind. Yinwashing sighed. She was sighing now. Even if that's the case. The young man waved his hand. But we didn't give them a lot of things as you think. In fact, the things that really fell into their hands are not that many, just 1 or 2. The conditions here are also, TCH, isn't there still the underworld? What do you think they're going to find the underworld with? It's going to take a lot of effort to rope them in and instigate them to defect. That's a pretty big picture. It's going to fool everyone in the underworld. Look at the situation now. There are at least 7 or 8 things that you have left behind. This condition is sufficient. The power of the chaotic concept body is also met. With these two added together, they can smash the door. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. What headache? The young man covered his face and rubbed his face with his palms. He let out a long sigh. The light that radiated from his body was exuding an aura of irritation. Back then in my long life, it's rare for there to be 1 or 2 things that make me feel a little regretful. TCH, bad taste, bad taste. The times have changed under our instructions. We're just a bunch of stubborn old antiques. We didn't change with the times or anything. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. She looked at him with an awkward gaze. Change with the times? Change with what? Don't tell me you want to be infected with those nasty and immoral habits and then call it change. This world is a big dye vat. Can't you live without soaking in it? Bah, don't make me laugh to death. This is just bullshit. You don't want to be a good person, and you're making yourself into a dark person. You call this dark change? I'd rather shatter this order void with a single slash. The young man was speechless. Here it comes. This little brat is getting irritable. Whenever something impure is brought up, she will become extremely irritable. If she keeps harping on this topic, the threat to the order void may increase exponentially. Ahem, of course not. The change I'm talking about refers to not changing the way we look at things that have changed. That is to say, we didn't notice the change of the order life forms that you mentioned. Everything started to become impure and complicated. In the false peace environment, the order life forms from the innate environment to the acquired environment had undergone drastic changes. Plus, there was no life from the chaos era left to be the guide of the new generation of life. This caused all the new life forms to embark on a different path. We didn't notice the change in time. We didn't understand the thoughts of the new generation of life. We still used the chaos era's way of dealing with the new world's life forms. It's not surprising that there would be unexpected changes. The young man patted his head and sighed. I know, but I can only sigh. My taste is really bad. We are indeed a bunch of old antiques living in the past. Every day, we only know how to talk to the void and think about killing chaos. But we didn't understand the changes in the perception of the new generation of life. I'm really sorry. As she poured the tea, she quietly took over the topic. My taste has always been good. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. She turned her head and saw her looking at her. She was stunned again. The young man and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry. Her taste was really good. It was not that she did not want to teach or for some other reason. Although she maintained a neutral attitude towards the new order of the void, she had also come into contact with the order life forms. Whether it was the new era or the chaos era, she had come into contact with them. She had also come into contact with the order life forms, whether it was the order life forms of the new era or the chaos era. She had also seen 2 or 3 passable little fellows who had tried with the same purpose. But they all failed in the end. As for the main reason for their failure, and also the only reason, was that their power did not match. The chosen successor could not withstand her power, so all of them failed. After all, she was the second in command of their family, the number 1 fighter. What? Was she talking about the guy who was sighing at the void every day? Forget it. As the second in command said, he was just a stinky little brother. His combat strength was not very good, and he was also a little indecisive. But after all, he was the one who dug out the power that belonged to order in them. He could cooperate with the order life forms to fight against the chaos. He was the one who proposed and practiced the path of the order creations. He also had his own responsibilities and designated path ahead. As for combat strength and whatnot, let the second in command do it himself. The path of the order creations was quite good. Yep, everyone was staunch supporters of this path, including the second in command. That's why the leader did not have to be the best at fighting. He just had to be able to point out the direction and let those who could beat the things that they could beat. If they could not beat the things that they could not beat, they would turn around and let those who could beat the things that they could not beat go and beat the things that they could not beat. If they could not do both, then they would not care about martial ethics. They would just directly find the creation that the leader had taken out and blast it. How satisfying would that be? It seems that the little one had to take care of 2 jobs. Ah, that's really tough, really tough. Cut out. If you know that I'm having a hard time, why don't you show me the way? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at this nagging fellow. If I ask you to strengthen the other side's fighting strength, and if I ask you to raise the difficulty for me, this battle won't be able to continue. Do you understand? We are deeply sorry for that, and we can't do anything about it. What can I do? We're just fragments. At most, we can make some tea here, enjoy the breeze, enjoy the scenery, and look at the fragments that you occasionally send in to see what you've been up to lately. That's all we can do. The youth sighed and spread his hands. Yin Nuashing grimaced. Don't be like that. Hurry up and use the experience that you have condensed over 300 epochs. I really don't want to charge into the underworld when I charge into it, only to have them raise their hands at once and charge us with 100 or 2 staffs of origins. With a boom and a crack, the origin energy would hit our faces, and we're done for. The youth was speechless. To be frank, that was not impossible. As mentioned before, the soul-suppressing ring contained a complete set of power. While it was not to the extent of having 100 or 2 staffs of origins, there were at least 7 or 8 of them. Who knows if they had left some for themselves? Even if one subtracted the one that the little one had, there were at least 5 left. While that did not sound like much, the Staff of Origins was a weapon used to deal with chaos concept entities back in the era of chaos. A single blast from the Staff of Origins could fuse a group of advanced primes into a single body. With such a level of power, it was no wonder that the little one was in a terrible fix. This was indeed too difficult and ridiculous. Back then, they were outnumbered by the chaos concept entity and had the entire territory of order, so they were evenly matched in terms of strength. But now, the situation that the little one and the others had to deal with was too difficult. Unfortunately, they didn't seem to have any way to help him. At most, they could give him some suggestions and ideas, and see if he could come up with something to guard order. Yin Nuashing looked at their troubled faces and sighed inwardly. It was not an easy task. Their realms were not equal, and their powers were not equal. In this era, the war between order and chaos had been going on for so long, and the reason order could hold on until now was because they had sacrificed their lives and died over and over again. Now, they had just gained a foothold, and even if they had gained a foothold, it was just a little. They were already having such a hard time dealing with cannon fodder, and the 20 advanced primes that the other side had thrown out almost destroyed them. Even if several eras had passed, and they could not be compared to back then, they still lacked hard power. This time, 20 advanced primes might not be able to do much to the void frontline, but who said that there were only 20 advanced primes on the other side? If 20 advanced primes could not do anything to them, could the underworld not throw out 200? Or perhaps 7 or 8 peak primes, and then it would be over. In order to not let order be completely destroyed, it seemed that they had to adopt a more deadly method. So, now that the existing conditions were arranged in front of them, the Fortress of Origin, the Staff of Origin, the Staff of Creation, the already changed energy source, the Temple of Origin, and the full set of energy source of origin. If they put all these things together, would there be any special results? They did not know, but they had to try. By the way, I thought of something. When the energy source was mentioned, Yin Nuashing looked up and quickly told the gods of origin about the energy source. That's it. The people of the underworld maintained a form of order, but you said that they had completely joined the chaos and become something neither human nor ghost. Then they erased all the imprints related to the origin of the energy source. Was it for their own convenience, or to restrict the underworld? These 2 answers may be in passing, or maybe they simply erased it because they did not like what we left behind. The young man laughed stiffly, and then immediately became serious. I have a third idea. Do you want to hear it? Yin Nuashing wiped the sweat off her forehead. Go ahead, I'm listening. I should be able to take it. He swallowed his saliva and felt that something was wrong. He moved the chair closer to her, so that the 2 of them were almost sitting together. She looked at him and reached out to press his head to calm him down. She reminded him, calm down. He wants to scare you. The young man coughed. Erasing the imprints of our energy can be used to supply energy to the abyssal death mist, which also proves that the energy rod we left behind at the beginning has ignored the boundary between order and chaos and become a pure energy source. It is just an energy source and has no specific purpose. This will reduce the speed of its energy condensation and release. But the advantage is that there is no restriction, right? As for what you said, they can use it for themselves or for the underworld to use it on the abyssal death mist derivative. Don't you think that it is a little redundant to use the energy rod we left behind on this kind of superfluous cannon fodder? Yin broke out in cold sweat. Tell me the answer. I'm thinking, could it be used in conjunction with that chaos concept body? It is the chaos concept body you mentioned before that is the core of the dead chaos concept body. They may be planning to directly use the power of the chaos concept body. Yin could not breathe and fainted on the spot. Chapter 1905. A long time ago, he and Hui had repeatedly discussed this something that the underworld used as a core to create the abyssal death mist spawn. As the past continued to be dug out of the ground, the dusty details of the previous era were revealed before them bit by bit. They could spread out the topic slowly, and the conclusion they obtained pushed their guesses to a place deeper and darker than the bottomless abyss. That was their initial guess, and one that they firmly believed until now. The more they learned about it, the more they felt that the core was either a chaos concept body or some kind of clone that was inseparable from the chaos concept body, or some fragment, or something that was possessed by the chaos concept body and died. Everything was possible, and there was no way to eliminate them. And the one thing that could not be removed was the chaos concept body. That thing was definitely related to them, and there was a 1,000,000% chance that it was related to chaos. He had also told the heavenly god of origins and the others about it, but they said that they were just broken fragments trapped in the shattered land and could not make a better judgment. Therefore, they agreed with him here. After all, the underworld was definitely related to the chaos concept body, and not just one, but possibly 2, 3, or even more. If possible, they even had to include the chaos concept bodies related to them. Well, there was no telling how far they had to go, but the default was that there were multiple chaos concept bodies. Although they knew about it, and knew that there might be a chaos concept body in the underworld, they had never been afraid or worried at all, because it was already dead. What they heard from the underworld was probably true, and a dead chaos concept body was a good one. They would just let it hang there, and would not be a big deal even if it used its own innate power to continuously throw out countless abyssal death mist spawn or chaos constructs to the underworld. They were just cannon fodder or higher-level cannon fodder. And with their current arm strength, it was a piece of cake to wipe out a region of cannon fodder. But what if the chaos concept body became active? That, he did not know and had never thought about it. Of course, it was also possible that he was refusing to think about it deep down. He had fought 3 chaos concept bodies, and each time he was pinned in the void and beaten to the brink of death. Counting carefully, he had to play himself to the brink of death in 3 of the 3 battles before he could barely burst out with the power to not be crushed to death. It was actually a struggle at death's door. All 3 times, the 3rd time was even worse. He had fought against that thing that seemed to have some brains, but had given up on part of its power. That thing had angered all the origin energy in his body and expressed that it wanted nothing more than to rush out and devour it alive. After that, it took over his body and went crazy, and to be frank, he was almost stuffed to death by the origin energy. As for the other 2 experiences he had with the concept entities of chaos, well, it was more or less the same, so there was no need to go into detail. In any case, it was not a good thing for him to encounter the concept entities of chaos. For some reason, those entities of chaos had shown a little interest in him. Apart from the first Chaos Spectre he met in the graveyard of gods and demons, the other 2 concept entities of chaos kept saying things like interesting, very interesting, so, and you seem to be fun to play with, which made his hair stand on end. He really wanted to turn and run whenever he saw them, but every time he encountered them, there was no way he could run away as he wished, and if he really wanted to run away, there was probably no way he could escape. Well, That was why he fainted when he heard that the underworld might be planning to use the power of that chaos concept body, specifically to pull it out and have it fight them head-on. He really did not dare to imagine what it would be like to have a chaos concept body come out from the flank when they were collectively charging into the underworld. Don't be so worried. The youth shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry when he saw Yun Nuoxing's head leaning back and completely paralyzed on the chair. I'm just saying that it's possible, but the truth is not set in stone, is it? Yun Nuoxing sat up abruptly and said with a serious face, "Come, look into my eyes. Come, tell me that what you just said is true. Otherwise, tell me the probability. As long as you dare to say it, I will dare to believe you." The heavenly god of origin and the chaos concept bodies were old foes. The two parties had fought until the void was torn apart, with neither dying but tormenting the two voids for who knows how many times. Then, as if they had made a pact, the battle at the end of the previous era ended, with both sides joining hands and escaping into the shadows without making a sound. The former had collectively entered the cycle of reincarnation and did not return after the 139th era, with the chaos concept bodies lurking in every corner of the void, waiting for an opportunity to strike. However, it appeared that there was no sign of them escaping even after the 139th era, which only proved that the heavenly god of origin had kept their coffins tightly sealed. Furthermore, apart from maintaining the suppression of them, perhaps Xian Yin and the others in the residence were also responsible for looking after the chaos concept bodies that were floating all over the void. Either way, they tacitly left as soon as they said so. As for the heavenly god of origin, even if what they believed was just a joke or a little speculation, he felt that it was much better than the guesses they made after half a day. Therefore, he basically believed whatever they said. At the very least, when it came to the chaos concept bodies, the underworld, and them, the heavenly god of origin would definitely know more than he did. There was no need for him to put on a brave front in that regard, and he just had to listen and be a well-behaved student. So don't be silent. Yun Nuoxing waited for 2 minutes before quietly urging the young man when he did not say anything. "Come, I'm ready. Hurry up and give me a quick death. Even if I'm scared to death, I can do it right away." "All right, since you put it that way." The young man held his chin with his fist and muttered to himself for a moment before softly declaring, 80% probability. Yun Nuoxing, he thought about it for a moment before hanging his head on the back of the chair and decided to pass out. Looking at how shocked you are, I don't even know if I should say what I'm about to say." The young man hesitated for a moment, and just as he said that, the little fellow shuddered and shook his head with a bitter smile. "All right, if you continue to pass out, I'll continue. Just treat it as if I'm talking to myself. And you can just treat it as if an idiot was mumbling to the air and you accidentally heard it. Right now, the underworld holds enough power to deal with the Order Void. According to you, they are too cautious and too opportunistic, which is why they have yet to launch a full-scale assault on the front lines of the Void. Instead, they're secretly accumulating power to deal with the Order Void at a lower cost, and it would be best if they could end it with a complete victory, destroying the Order Void without paying any price. Then, combined with what you told us about the problem with the core, I can imagine that they're trying their best to mobilize the core at the power of the chaos concept body. In this era, where we have lost our protection and the power of the first-generation heirs, as well as the growth of the second-generation heirs, any chaos concept body that descends upon the world of order would only result in total collapse. There would be no other path. Yun Nuoxing shuddered and rolled his eyes. Of course he knew that. It was precisely because he knew that it was all over for any chaos concept body to join the war of this era that he was hanging here like an idiot. In this life, he actually had the slightest thought of running away, but it was just the slightest, and it would be strangled in the cradle before it could expand. It was impossible to compromise. In this lifetime, it was impossible for him to compromise with chaos. He couldn't defeat it, and he didn't like to stretch out his neck to be slaughtered. He could only desperately save up his strength to the point where he couldn't go any crazier. Then, he would charge over in one breath. Even if he had to sacrifice 100 million to kill one enemy, it was worth it, As long as that one was the lord of the underworld, or that chaos concept body, everything would be worth it. Although I don't know what terrible things you're thinking about, the youth said as he coughed. The youth coughed dryly and continued, listen to me first before you think about those crazy thoughts. There's an 80% chance that they're studying the power of the chaos concept body, or perhaps trying to awaken it. After all, the underworld holds the power of chaos just as they do, and there is no guarantee that they would not lend their chaos power to the underworld to awaken the chaos concept body. However, I have to say, but the awakened chaos concept body would be bound by restrictive conditions regardless, or the power it obtains from its forced awakening would not be complete and could not be recovered. However, it would still be enough to destroy the void of order, which is why the underworld judged that it is worth it and is busy. Or, there are other restrictions. For example, it could not leave the underworld, or it needs to stay in the underworld and use some method to restrain its movements to obtain the conditions for awakening. If it's you, you should be able to figure it out, right? Yin Nuashing sat up slightly and began to consider the two theories the youth put forward. It was understandable. The restriction of power had something to do with the conversation he and his little angel had heard when they met Qing Chi and Bei Hao. What body, what already dead, and so on. Chaos concept bodies were immortal and indestructible, and their state of collapse seemed to be different from the collapse of energy life forms. It would not be as easy for them to awaken as it was for normal energy life forms, and if they were forcefully awakening the chaos concept body through abnormal means, it might affect itself in part, and there was no way for it to recover in the short term. However, even so, it was still a chaotic concept body, and it wasn't easy to deal with it. With their current conditions and strength, they had to be fully prepared and gather all their strength before they could fight a weakened chaotic concept body for a few hundred rounds. As for the other theory, it was easy to understand. If the chaos concept body had truly awakened and could run around, they would not have to spend so much effort to charge at the void front lines for several years. They would not have to fight the war in the first place, and could just stay there and awaken the chaos concept body. When the time came, the chaos concept body that had awakened ahead of time could release all the other chaos concept bodies, and it would not even be a problem for them to directly charge into the void of order for a massacre. It would only take a dozen days for the void of order to fall, and they could clean it up. While the chaos energy had yet to disperse and the void of order had yet to recover, they could also use the environment of the destroyed void of order to reshape part of the void and accomplish their little objective. There was no need to fight them in the void of order, and all they had to do was to sit and wait for the results. How happy would that be? Therefore, even if the chaos concept body had awakened, it might not be able to move freely. There were two outcomes. It could move freely, but its ability would be greatly reduced, and they could try to destroy it in a head-on clash. On the other hand, if its combat ability was not damaged, but its movement was restricted, well, could it be that they had to stand guard at the void front lines and wait for the underworld to come knocking on their door? That would not do. That would not work. There was no way to win by defending. They had to attack. The third theory was the same as the second, that its movement was restricted. That was easy to explain, since AI Hongyu knew that if the chaos concept body lurked in any body, it would be even more restricted. It would be restricted by the body and power of the life form of order, and it would not be a problem for it to fall several levels. As for that body, there was no telling if it had something to do with the first-generation heirs. At present, it was only certain that a few first-generation heirs had been possessed, and there was no telling if the other chaos concept bodies had simply found someone to sleep in. There are two answers. In my opinion, of course, I'm more inclined to the theory that its movement is restricted. Noticing the change in Hao Ren's expression, the young man guessed that the little guy might have finished sorting out his thoughts, and so he continued, if its strength is weakened, it will be fine as long as we wait for a while, and the weakening will not be a problem. In this void, there is nothing other than us that can fundamentally and conceptually limit the strength of the chaos concept bodies. Unfortunately, when we died, we did not have the time to do anything to limit their strength, so this theory is more or less ruled out. It's impossible to weaken their strength, but their movement is restricted. This is similar to them. At the end of the war, they tried to cut off the connection between the chaos concept bodies and the greater yuan realm from the conceptual and root, thereby weakening them. Well, I don't know if it was a success, but it must have had some effect. Coupled with the fact that the underworld has been doing everything they can to take down the Order Void, delaying their attack until now, and wanted to end the war without losing a single soldier, we can conclude that their trump card is the power of the chaos concept bodies. But there is a slight restriction. If the chaos concept bodies cannot leave the underworld, they will drag you to the underworld to fight. Furthermore, they are destroying the Order Void as they wish, causing the stability of the Order Void to rapidly decline in preparation for the upcoming general attack. When the stability of the Order Void decreases, they will be able to unscrupulously spread out of space like a primeval domain, forcefully covering that space in front of them, which is to drag the power of order into the underworld and let the chaos concept bodies deal with you, wiping out the power of order bit by bit. Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded. Then if I charge into the underworld, won't I be walking into a trap? The young man scratched his head, and the others shrank their necks and looked away. They had just thought of this problem when they had just sorted out their thoughts, and it was very, very bad. For a warrior who only knew how to charge, there was nothing more painful than having to forcibly remove the ability to charge and attack, and only be able to stay in the back and defend, let alone this irritable little guy. Forcing him to fight a defensive battle was no different from asking him to sit there and wait for death, right? The young man scratched his head. Perhaps when you attack, the chaotic concept body has not woken up yet, right? As soon as the topic changed to the problem of time, Yin Nuashing felt a little more headache. They had no way to determine when the underworld would be ready and when they were not. They could only speed up their preparations as time passed, but there was no way they could reach a state of complete preparation. Whether they set off now or after an era, they would still be in a hurry to fight. Things like proper preparation did not exist, especially when they knew that the underworld might be playing a bigger game this time. They knew that there was no way they could be ready unless they brought out the primordial god. What should they do? They could not think of a plan, but they could not think of a way to achieve perfection. They still had to take it one step at a time and go step by step. All right, it's not the day of the final battle. Don't be so quick to look like you're going to die together. The young man waved his hand, pulling Yin Nuashing's drifting thoughts back. You still have plenty of time to prepare. Even if the underworld really wants to awaken a chaotic concept body, it would not be done in a short period of time. From what you said about half an era ago, they might have slowed down their attack on the Void front line to deal with this matter. They're not ready, just as you're doing your best to prepare. This is a race of time, and the one who runs faster has a greater chance of victory. The young man patted his clothes and stood up. He walked to the disheveled little guy and reached out to pat his head. For the time being, it's not impossible to think things through. Whether you lose or win, as long as you do your best, it's fine. Try your best so that you have no regrets. When the time comes, well, although I don't like the saying after I die, I'll let him do whatever he wants, but that's the truth, isn't it? Look at us. No matter how unwilling we are, even if we want to do something, we can only look for you from time to chat with you and give you some reminders and suggestions. We can't affect more than that. That's easy for you to say. Yin Nuashing breathed a long sigh and sprawled over the table, rolling his eyes. No regrets. How would I know to what extent it means to have no regrets? Compared to the so-called process of ending with no regrets, I want an ending with no regrets more. Even if he knew that it was just a wishful dream, he had already exhausted his heart and soul for it. Could he really say that, no matter what the result is, I can do it with a clear conscience and no regrets? It was impossible. No matter what, it was impossible. There would not be any regrets, but there might be other emotions involved. Just like how he knew that the established facts pointed to failure, but he was still immersed in the broken dream that he could not wake up from. He was struggling desperately, constantly rotating reality and dream back and forth. One side was reality, and the other side was reality. He was forcing himself with such dreams and reality, watching himself fall into the abyss, gradually falling into depravity and madness. Don't think too much. She gently pressed her hand on his head, restraining his thoughts that were becoming more and more deranged. She patted him with her hand. Just do it, and do your best. Reality, the void, all these existences are not up to you and me to decide. It has nothing to do with fate, luck, or anything else. It's just that we can only get this ending for the time being. We need to be sure, an ending that cannot be distorted, but is destined to continue, and we will not stop. It's okay if we fail. We still have a lot of time. We have unlimited time to wait, and we can make unlimited choices. For them, for us, we can fail countless times, but only one victory is enough. Just like the day when the new era was announced, we did not lose, and they did not win. So, everything will continue until all of this usher in the true end. She gently stroked his head and felt that his raging thoughts had calmed down a little. Then, she pulled him up by the arm and walked towards the white palaces. Come, we've spent too much time talking. We still have important things to do. Yin Nuoxing quickly regained his senses after being dragged away. He did not even care about the crazy reverberations that were still reverberating in his mind. Looking at Lin Sanjiu, who was pulling his hand and walking forward, he quickly said, What do you mean by important things? Are you going to string me up again? It's just an inspection. Why do you keep harping on that incident? Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. You strung me up, and even let me see the thing that I hate the most in my dreams. I can harp on that until the end of time. And if you really come back from reincarnation one day, I will personally rush to your faces and say, you strung me up and hung me up in the sanctuary of creation. The Empyrean gods of origin. That was a lot of resentment, a very subtle resentment. This little one's resentment was really not easy to deal with. Speaking of the inspection, he had accidentally forgotten about the matter of the core of order. He had done it on purpose. He had said that he had been busy recently, but he would never forget about the lump in his stomach. We had even teased him about being pregnant. He would never forget about this lump, even if he became a ghost. Although he was really busy recently. In the sanctuary of creation, it was still in the hall that he had a slight impression of. Last time, he was hung in air in this hall that was engraved with countless energy marks. This time, it seemed that there was no need for it. Lin Sanjiu pulled him to a spacious metal table and pressed him down. When he lay down obediently, a group of people quickly surrounded him. It was really a group of people. In addition to the few people in front of him, he also seemed to feel the gazes from all directions. He did not know how many pairs of eyes were hanging on him. If he was familiar with them, he felt a pair of eyes with a subtle feeling, with a hint of mischief contained in them. It was a bit like the gaze of the Empyrean god of origin who had a long strand of a hogue on her head. When he thought of how many pairs of eyes were hidden in all directions, and all of them were staring at him with some subtle thoughts, it was creepy. He felt that this time, he might as well have slapped him into a physical sleep and then strung him up. Now that he was being stared at collectively, it was really, really annoying. The inspection process was similar to when he used the sanctuary of creation to torment the primordial relic. He was all too familiar with those golden pancake magic circles. The pancake magic circle in front of him was larger and more complicated. It should be the version that had not been castrated. He was very comfortable using the castrated pancake magic circle. It was just that when he thought about how he was the object of study this time, in the time that he closed his eyes and muttered in his heart, they had already announced that they were done. Accompanied by a buzzing sound of energy, Yin Nuoxing quickly sat up and looked at their expressions. Well, he could not tell. All of their faces were white. The energy of the staff of creation, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He did not expect her to mention this as soon as she opened her mouth. He thought that she would directly talk about the core of order. Yes, it is also related to the core of order. She nodded softly. The energy that the staff of creation is releasing comes from the energy that it had charged and gathered when it was still intact. In other words, it is the energy that had been stored in it dozens of eras ago. It is our energy, and it contains a lot of shards. Those shards should have strengthened your connection with the Shattered Lands. What happened? Yin Nuashing was a little nervous. He was afraid that something would happen to the lump in his stomach and cause him to collapse. The energy of the staff of creation has been completely absorbed. The young man scratched his head and glanced at him. The core of order has absorbed half of the complete energy. Half. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. He reached out and searched his body. The other half is still inside? The other half. She stepped forward and stretched out her slender finger and gently tapped on his heart. It is here. It is in the heart of the world of our continent. Yin Nuashing was stunned. It is about to wake up. Yin Nuashing was stunned again. After a while, he came to a realization. 5 years ago, he had said that the heart of the world of the continent of origin would take a long time to wake up. 5 or 6 years, or 6 or 7 years. However, as he came into contact with things and things related to them, if he recalculated the time should be about now. Time had come unknowingly. Let's stay here for a few days. She said softly, it is not too late to leave after the heart of the world and the core of order have finished their evolution. Chapter 1906. The core of order and the world core of the continent of origins were both in his body. The core of order kept giving him the illusion that there was a lump in his stomach or brain, while the core of order had been staying in his body for a very long time. 5 years. Although, according to what he had guessed back then, the core of order should have stayed in his heart for a longer period of time. But now it seemed that the frequent contact with things related to them in the void had caused the core of order and the core of order fragments to enter his body and speed up his awakening, whether intentionally or not. As for what this thing was going to do after it awakened, well, who knew? Yes, he did not know. He was not stupid. It would be a lie to say that he did not care about these things that were stuffed into his stomach. But if he did care, he could only stare blankly at them for a long time. He could not do anything but wait for them to change on their own. And now, it seemed that the change was about to begin, but he had no idea what they were going to do. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a pure awakening. She whispered to him, standing at the top of the White Palace and overlooking the entire continent of origin. He could take in 80% of the scenery. Bright colors adorned the forests, mountains, and rivers, and the looming boulders were like screens that separated the front, back, left, and right. Such an angle, such a scene. Vaguely, he felt like he had seen this view somewhere before. Not the shattered continent of origin. That place had been shattered into pieces. He still had an impression of the square that looked like the main palace and the little house that she left behind. His impression was of another place, a place that he had seen a long time ago, a place that was so long ago that he could not even remember it. Ah, I remember now. The Red Star Academy. That day when he stood on the top floor of the Academy Palace with Xianyin, the scenery that he saw was 50% similar to what he saw here. There were many similarities between the two places. The location of the buildings, the path through the sea of flowers in the dense forest, and the broken land here had been modified by the girl. It was obvious that it was different from the continent of origin back then. Perhaps this action had erased more of the similar details that should have existed. It was a memory from so long ago that he could still remember it. It was a memory from so long ago that he could still remember it. It was both. That's what they say. Yin Nuashing came back to her senses and turned to look at her. But what's the use of the awakened heart of the world and the evolving core of order? They can't just be decorations, just placed here. Oh, look at them. They have to be of some use, right? For example, in the void, it can create a void region or a world, or create an environment. It can even replicate the continent of origins or something. Look, I even have the model of your home with me. Or to be more straightforward, it can be used to strengthen our combat power or something. If not, it could be used as an energy source, right? She turned her head and looked at him. After a moment, she said faintly, study it yourself. Yin Nuashing was speechless. All right, this answer again. But the growth on his body did require him to study it himself. He was just trying to dig out some information from her to save himself some trouble. After all, there were a lot of things to do. The last time he came in, he was mumbling about the source law. This time, he came in again. After a long time, he was still mumbling about the source law and was still waiting. No need to rush. She gently patted his head. This is something that can't be rushed. Preparation needs to be complete, so there's no need to rush. Be patient. The answer is in your heart. Yin Nuashing muttered. This girl really likes to pat his head. Although there was nothing taboo for him, but they didn't seem to be that close. Close? Or not close. They seemed to be close, but not completely, just a little. Well, after all, it was this kind of relationship. Although he disliked it, it was something that could not be denied. Yes, he did not admit it. It was not that he did not, at least not now. Look, he had completely rejected it at the beginning, but now he was starting to accept it bit by bit. One day he would admit it, right? Although whether he admitted it now or not, everyone treated him as their representative. Even the group of second-generation inheritors were cheering him on. Cheering? Huh. This was obviously the style of someone who wanted to shirk responsibility and not do anything. Why was it so similar to them? Good Lord, they did not learn anything else from their venerable god, but they were really good at shirking responsibility. What? They all wanted to learn from their venerable god and not do anything, and then push a guy who looked easy to bully into the position, right? But after thinking about it carefully, forget it. That group of unreliable fellows, he and Hui should put in some effort to get things done. If he really forced them to take the lead in this war, who knows what kind of trouble might happen. What are you thinking about? Yin Nuashing was slightly startled. She had been staring at him from the corner of her eyes. He could not help but be stunned for a moment. Had she been staring at him when he was in a daze? I'm thinking about the mess over there. I'm thinking about your unreliable second-generation inheritors, about this war that is so troublesome and deadly just to prepare for, and about how to deal with the concept of chaos that might appear out of nowhere. As he spoke, he pulled at his long hair with a headache. Even if the answer is in my heart, I still have to search for it bit by bit. I have to dig 3 feet into the ground to dig it out. If I just sit on the ground and do nothing but wait for the so-called answer to pop out, the underworld will pop out before the answer comes out. By the way, the concept of chaos. How many of them are there? Yin Nuashing subconsciously asked this equally important question. Well, it was not particularly important for the time being, mainly because he was very curious. She looked at him for a moment, then turned her head and looked ahead as if she was thinking if she should tell him the news now. So she pondered for a while, and about 4 or 5 minutes later, she looked back at him and said softly, 3 times the number. There are 3 times the number of us. Yin Nuashing was speechless. 3 times the number. If it was up to them, each of them would have to fight 1 against 3. Moreover, they would have to face the endless number of chaos soldiers. After that, there would be 2 ingrates who would jump ship and show their weapons. It would not be as simple as 1 against 3. Although the beings of order would also participate in the war, but, that's what it meant. They could not compare in terms of numbers, and their levels were lower. How did you guys survive for more than 300 years? Just like that, we persevere. She crossed her hands in front of her abdomen and whispered softly, persevere, persevere, fight, 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 never stop, that's all. The order life forms of the chaos era are cooperative and tacit. They only have one goal. Although they are not as lively as the new era, which is full of surprises and mysteries, they can at least ensure that they can survive the corrosion of chaos. The order life forms of the new era have distributed all their talents against chaos to other talents, greatly reducing their combat power. At this moment, if they were to encounter a chaos concept entity without the protection of our weaved net of power, the order void would be destroyed in 3 minutes. If 1 chaos concept entity were to move. A single chaos concept entity against the order void's power would be annihilated. Yin Nuashing was speechless. It seemed that she had underestimated those ink monsters. Those bastards could destroy the void of order without even showing their faces. Although there are many levels, the reason that order has persisted until now is not only because of us and the beings of order in the era of chaos, but also because they themselves are a reason. They do whatever they want, be it fighting or watching. You will never be able to understand what they are thinking, and the 441 of them only hold the same belief, to destroy order. Apart from that, their movement patterns can never be seen or calculated. Just when you think that they are about to combine forces to destroy the defensive line before you, 2 or 3 of them might suddenly leave or give up on the defensive line here. It is also possible that a defensive line that is already on the verge of collapse could be destroyed by a single concept of chaos, only for 300 of them to break through the defensive line in one fell swoop. Just like how they do not appear to be in a hurry. Even if their essence is to destroy order, they're not in a hurry to flatten every concept of order in one breath. Their purpose, however, is also impossible to discern. If you were to say that they enjoy the process, perhaps only a portion of them would enjoy such a degree. That portion of them are keen on destruction, watching as worlds are built from scratch bit by bit, developing life and civilization, watching as the beings within evolve, leaving their cradles and stepping into the stars, broadening their knowledge to the entire world until they reach the void, finally appearing before them and destroying the newborn world in one fell swoop. That is an example. Yin Nuashing was speechless. That was certainly doing whatever they want, so much so that it would make one's hair stand on end. It sounded as if they were free to fight or not, fighting however they wanted and stopping whenever they wanted. Rather than saying that they were the ones who started the war between order and chaos, it was more like playing a game in the void based on their instincts. Although the price of playing the game was a little high, with order void and world light consumed a little. To put it simply, they were a bunch of lunatics who were sick in the head and had epilepsy. And there was no way to tell if those fellows who kept saying that they were happy, and interesting actually had brains. There was a good chance that they did not. They did not. Apart from that, order had been continuously weakening the power of chaos since the first battle of the chaos era. There are 3 times more chaos concept bodies than us, but that is just the total number. They would die just like us. We would disintegrate and reassemble in our own backyard, while they would return to their roots and become undetectable, reappearing in the chaotic void after some time. However, that time is not easy to calculate and fluctuates greatly. Both are actually disintegration, although it is a little different from the disintegration of energy life forms in the ordinary sense, and it is clearer to talk about them separately. She diverted the topic, before quickly returning to it. There are 441 chaos concept bodies, but in the war, only 300 of them had officially participated in the battle, with the remaining 100 or so remaining in a state of returning to their roots, and if nothing unexpected happens, that is the case until now. Yin Nuashing stared blankly. Are they dozing off and not wanting to wake up? No. As I said, returning to their roots, and she paused and changed her words slightly. The disintegration of energy life forms is also categorized as mild, moderate, and complete. Our complete disintegration means that we have stepped into the path of reincarnation, and it is a disintegration that could not be preserved or revived using methods such as the spiritual temple. Their complete disintegration into their roots is the same, and there is no telling how long it would take for them to return. Moreover, we would seal them when they are completely disintegrated, which is why it would take even longer. Oh, Yin Nuashing came to a realization. Before the end of the mythological era, more than 100 chaos concept bodies had already passed away, which was truly a cause for celebration. Furthermore, they had been asleep for quite some time, since there was no sign of the power of chaos in the 139th era. So they must still be asleep. Why were the 2 of them standing here and chatting? Well, in fact, they were not the only ones here. For example, although they appeared to be the only 2 on the huge platform on the roof of the palace, a large group of small eyes were staring at him from all directions, sizing him up from head to toe. He always felt that a few pairs of eyes were so deranged that it was almost as if they had ripped open his clothes and burrowed inside. It was already numb. Anyway, since he was pulled into the sanctuary of creation, this group of gazes had not stopped. This group of primordial gods clearly wanted to do something, such as string him up again or something, but they just did not show up and just stared at him, making him feel uncomfortable all over. He wanted to rub his nose, but had to pretend to be speechless and cover his face to rub it quickly. As for why it was so weird, it was as if they were monitoring him from all angles, or, to be precise, to see when something would happen to him. The experience of him suddenly lying down last time was still fresh in their minds, and now that something was about to happen to the core of order and the world core, they were keeping an eye on him, with one of them taking care of him closely while the rest just stared at him, as if they could not wait to see him faint. Come on, let me show you what it means to take a close look. Look at how he pretended to notice something and took a step to the left. She took the same step as him and landed beside him. Just like when they were standing side by side, just now, they were all a few inches away from each other without any difference. It was weird. No, he did not mean that it was scary to be followed. Logically speaking, knowing that the two lumps on his body were about to cause trouble, it was good to have someone closely watching over him, especially since the two lumps belonged to them in the first place. Professionals did professional things. Those who made things were professionals building things, and those who were strung together were professionals waiting to be strung together. He was mainly frightened by this scene, and it was understandable that she would take care of him closely. After all, there were 145 pairs of eyes staring at him nonstop. He felt that he might have been possessed by the concept body of chaos, and he was afraid that he would faint in the next second. As long as they did not start resuscitating him the moment he fainted, he might not be able to be saved. It was quite scary, wasn't it? If someone else woke up in the ward and saw more than 100 doctors standing in the ward, staring at them motionlessly, all of them holding something in their hands. It looked like they had everything from treating illnesses to forging. How serious would that be? They would know after giving it a try? While he was letting his imagination run wild, Lin Sanjiu suddenly came over and pressed her hand on his chest. After a moment of silence, she took her hand away and said softly, "You're awake and stable. Nothing unusual." From the beginning until now, he had listened to it 7 times. He listened to it once every 5 minutes and looked at it once every 5 minutes. Even when he was in the middle of chatting, he would suddenly check the situation and bring the observation results to Yin without changing the topic. "I don't think it's that serious." Yin Nuoxing's face was slightly gloomy as he swallowed. "To be honest, I'm under a lot of pressure with you guys staring at me like this. I feel like I'm going to die in the next second. The matter may be very serious, or may not have any effect. The core of order and the heart of the world will not have any abnormalities. Not to mention, we are still watching closely at this time, so there is no possibility of any accident." She looked directly at him and said softly, "But you may bring about an accident. The last time you had an accident in the sanctum of creation, we may have found the answer." Yin Nuoxing was startled when he heard it. His mouth was dry and his hands were trembling. What answer? The last time the core of order went crazy for no reason. Well, he was strung up and fainted, so he was not particularly clear about it. His subconscious only had a faint feeling that he might be experiencing at that time, but it was only to the extent of vagueness. He was strung up for surgery while he was unconscious, and who knows if he would wake up and find that there was something extra or missing in his body. Even if there was something extra or missing, generally speaking, he would not have the memory of that time. She looked at him for a while and said softly, "The abnormality may come from you, the original light, and the heart of the world. The 3 conditions together affect the core of order. But among them, the abnormality that comes from you is the biggest variable." Yin Nuoxing was sweating profusely. That the abnormality in my body? What abnormality? It can affect the core of order, and it could be an abnormality that none of you can sense. Don't tell me I'm going to die in the next second. If it's true, please explain it to me immediately. I'll leave my last words. Ouch. She shook her head and said softly, "Your true form is unclear. The fundamental reason is related to the new era. That is a new world that even we have yet to fully understand. As mentioned before, the order beings of the era of chaos had poured everything into the war between order and chaos. Hence, everything else was missing. The new era had almost reversed the situation, abandoning the pure and unadulterated power. Hence, there were countless mysteries, possibilities, and malleability. In other words, anything that happens in the void of order in the new era is normal. Since it has already happened, we only need to treat it as an established fact. That is the case for the origin beings. They are new life that only appeared in the new era. During the era of chaos, there was no such gap that could accommodate their existence. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. He had heard them talk about the violence and mania of the chaos era. At that time, the Yuan realm was in a pure state of being either black or white. Referring to the Yuan realm's environmental rules, there was no such thing as the third and fourth order, the cradle between the cracks, the cradle created by the wrong rules of the void. None of these things existed. If you were to talk about these things at that time, it would be no different from saying, well, actually the chaos concept body was on the side of order in the beginning. Well, if you were to say that, it might be a little more serious. Apart from causing laughter, he might also be beaten up. Cough, cough. In any case, that was an era that was fixed by the environment. All the rules of the environment were either order or chaos, without any ambiguity. Well, I can imagine how monotonous that era would be. No, I don't think so at all. In fact, I only think that there would be more troubles or less troubles, but on a higher level. Anyway, the troubles in the void are constant. They're easy to deal with if there are many problems, but if there are few problems, they will be too troublesome. Then, are there any problems that are numerous and troublesome? Of course there was. Yes, that was right. He was talking about the primal chaos concept bodies. 441 primal chaos concept bodies were equivalent to 441 troublesome demons. Each troublesome demon could cause the great primal realm to collapse back and forth countless times. Even if more than 100 of them had collapsed, there were still more than 300 of them. These 300 troublesome demons would still cause the great primal realm to collapse in the new epoch. She watched him ponder for a while, and when he came back to his senses, she continued, because of this, it is very normal that there are things in the new era that we have yet to recognize. In you, it is very likely that you are something that we have yet to recognize. It's a pity that if we were in our normal state, we should be able to use some methods to find out what you are. She stretched out her hand and lifted his arm, holding in her hand and gently pinching it. Her gaze followed the arm all the way up, making Yin Nuoxing's hair stand on end. He always felt that this was weighing the weight of his body. Right now, there is no way to know. It's just a guess, and it can only be a guess. However, if the mysteries and anomalies that you are entangled with are huge enough, then it can indeed prove their words. Perhaps it is because of this situation that they regard you as something at the beginning of the Yuan realm. Perhaps your existence has reached the level where they can misjudge or cannot distinguish you from us. Yin Nuoxing shuddered and took a step back inadvertently. Seeing that she immediately took a step forward, he was stunned for a moment and smiled bitterly. Don't scare me. No. What I want to say is, even in the mythological era, no matter how malleable, possible, and mysterious the new era when you guys are still around is, it shouldn't be possible for you guys to recognize the unidentified object at a glance, right? However, this is the fact. My inference can't be wrong. There is a very high probability that you are an anomaly that we can't recognize for the time being. Probability is meaningless to the void. We only care about the established facts. Your existence and your appearance here are the established facts that the void tells us. In that case, probability is meaningless, even if it is infinitely close to zero. Yin Nuoxing wiped the sweat off his forehead. If you say that I am something that you accidentally touched in the age of chaos, I can believe it. For example, you accidentally touched some weird thing when the two of you were fighting against each other. But if you say that I am an unknown thing that was born in the age of mythology, I always feel that it is very weird. Indeed, it is not an object of the age of chaos. As she said, she suddenly leaned forward. Her white face was only an inch away from him. He smelled her scent that had appeared on him before. It was really a little fragrant. It was incredible that a fragment could still produce such information. She leaned forward as if to identify something. After a while, she slowly stepped back and nodded gently. Indeed, there is no scent of the age of chaos. If you're something that already existed in the age of chaos, even if you have crossed the reincarnation cycle, you will still be entangled with some traces of the past era. There are traces on us and them, but you don't. Well, then let's talk about something serious. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and pointed at himself. Although I don't have much hope, I still have to ask, what am I? She slightly lowered her head this time and pondered. Yin Nuashing was stunned. He thought that she would directly answer the answer that he had answered a few times. He waited quietly. She did not forget to lean forward and check. She threw out the same answer and continued to ponder. After about 10 minutes, she looked up and looked into his eyes. Perhaps you're a kind of creature that is related to the concepts of energy, macroscopic rules, creation. These are the results of the discussion just now. These three conditions are the minimum conditions. You are the condition that caused the abnormality in the core of order. That is to say, it is the result of reverse deduction. Yin Nuashing's face twisted like a bitter gourd. Can the void give birth to some kind of creation of order? No, it is just a kind of creation. It does not necessarily have to be order. In the beginning, you might have appeared in order, so you were infected with order. Perhaps your real name can be called derivative of nothingness and origin. This is the name that we have given you just now. It is a temporary name. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Damn it, he had really plucked her out of the void. Chapter 1907. In the past, he had always joked that he would one day be removed from the category of derivatives related to the void and become a category of his own. He had never thought that his words would come true. He had really been removed from the category this time. Spawns related to the void were, to put it simply, everything that existed in the order void. From the millions of life forms and world luminous clusters to the spheres and dust that filled the stars. All of them were spawns related to the void and were directly or indirectly born from the void. Not even primordial life forms could escape from them. Even if they existed in gaps and were born from energy, energy had to be filtered by the void before it could appear. Therefore, it was not unusual to say that they were spawns related to the void. That is, even if they were chased and beaten by the void ever since they appeared, unable to live in peace. Now, he had been defined as something related to the void or the origin. This had nothing to do with the void anymore, and he had really been removed from it. Other than him knowing that he was a living being, everything else seemed to be difficult to define, such as what exactly he was. A derivative of the void or the origin. Yin Nuashing's face darkened as she pointed at herself. What is this? A life form that was born directly from the void or the origin. He thought of Ji Kuan, the origin life form that was born directly from the void. He thought of Ji Kuan's situation and compared it to his own. Am I a different kind of origin life form? She shook her head slightly. No, origin life forms originate from energy. It is a life form that was born purely from energy. At most, it is the rule, with the rule as the skeleton, the origin of energy as the soul and consciousness. Together, they create this existence. There is no other impurity. Moreover, the concept of energy is also in the void. You, a derivative of the void and the origin, have nothing to do with the void. We define you as a derivative of the void or the origin that descended from the void or the origin. You did not pass through the void or anything else, and only used the void or the origin as the foundation and the basic structure to establish your vague existence, soul, and consciousness. When you go to the void will fill the entire framework. The void and the origin are not energy or pure rule. They are a type of factor in the state of chaos. They are not material or energy. Their nature is vaguely linked to the rule, and normal people cannot use them. However, they are indeed the foundation of the void. If you can't understand it, then consider 50% of the shattered and chaotic rule as part of it. The other 50% is the factor called void or origin. You can separate them out and treat them as a special existence. These two 50% existences together form the void and the origin environment. You can just say that I'm a hollow ball filled with paint. Yin Nuashing was stunned. Her mind was filled with framework, skeleton, filler, and the like. She felt that she had become a lot weirder. Anyway, she was probably not a life form of the origin like them. Void and origin. I always thought that the origin refers to the void during the chaos era. That was why I named it the origin rule after copying the rule of that time. I never thought that it has another meaning. The situation is similar, but it is not the case. The existence of the origin is relatively weak and is filled with inertia. Even after the chaos era has passed and it has come to the new era, it has not changed much. It is not more than 10% different from the origin environment of the chaos era. You can feel that the current origin environment is not much different from the chaos era. However, it does not involve the 50% of the rule. The difference of less than 10% refers to the factor of the origin itself. The other half of the rule has already changed greatly with the change of the era. Just like the void environment of the new era and the chaos era has a difference of more than 80%, the shattered and chaotic rule in the origin environment has also changed by more than 80%. As she spoke, she seemed to sigh softly. As time passes, the great environment will also change with the passage of time. It is the influence of the great Yuan realm's own activities. It cannot be stopped, and there is no need to stop it. You only need to adapt to the changes of time and observe their changes. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. The changes of the great environment could not be stopped. However, for people like her who played with the rule, order, and concept, creating a suitable environment that was not affected by the great environment was not as troublesome as cooking. There was no need to stop it at all. She had long stopped caring about the great environment rule. Generally speaking, unless she personally cut something off, it would affect her and the ink monsters on the opposite side. Otherwise, the void activities and the great Yuan realm's activities, the storms that destroyed billions of lives, were just a sea breeze in the evening to her. All right, another part of the secrets of the great Yuan realm had been revealed to him. Although she had told him personally and he had not revealed it himself, it did not make much of a difference. It was fine as long as he knew about it. He could only know about it. Otherwise, what else could he do? Even if he knew about it, could he use this information to do something? The nothingness environment and the source environment were both concepts that they couldn't manipulate. Currently, the only ones who could manipulate these two concepts were a group of people wandering around in the cycle of reincarnation, a group of people wandering around in the void, and who knew what the remaining two groups of people could do. However, since their previous selves belonged to order and were related to the origin heavenly god, it was possible that these two groups of people could do such a thing and pose a threat to the origin heavenly god. Anyway, they could not do anything. They really could not do anything. Common sense is indeed difficult to deal with and difficult to understand for normal life forms. She seemed to have seen through his thoughts and said softly, "However, if it's you, maybe you can give it a try." Yin Nuoxing face-bombed and was speechless. Even if my original body is I don't know what it is, but now I am I don't know what it is, but I am still wearing the skin of a human. I should be considered a normal life form. Yes, normal. Hey, don't be normal. You are considered normal in the void. The other life forms are all things that have not been fully developed. Isn't that so? The guy who punched me in the face and made my hand swollen said that he is a normal life form. Why do I feel that something is wrong? Something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. The whispers that echoed in the space around Yin Nuoxing made the veins on his forehead bulge. You eavesdroppers who do not show your faces. If you want to eavesdrop, then eavesdrop. Please do not express your opinions. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and said, "At least I still look like a normal life form." Right? Even if I'm not a normal life form, I still look like a normal life form on the surface. All of the heavenly origin gods hurriedly replied in unison, No. Regardless of whether it is on the surface or in reality, it cannot be described as normal. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and threw his last hope to her. "Well, tell me, I am actually very," she turned her head and looked to the side. "Very unconventional." Yin Nuoxing. Fine. He was already so unconventional that even the heavenly origin gods had to vote that he was not a human. This could be considered a joint statement from the order of the void. To put it simply, he was not a human at all. even though that was what he thought in the first place, if he was forced to separate himself. Phew, forget it, it was not that bad. Speaking of which, what should he call himself in the future? Feng Ling. Oh, Feng Ling, the observer of the divine realm? Oh no, there was no other way to say it. Regional titles were different from racial titles. For example, Hui was considered a human when he was alive. Even if he had now evolved into an energy life form, his soul still had the aura of a human, so he could still be called Hui, the human race. Of course, it was not impossible to call himself Hui, the energy life form. It was just that when he said it, 70% of the living beings would not understand what it meant. In the entire void, there were not many who had changed their life form into an energy life form. Probably no more than 3%, so there was very little knowledge. If he said, I am an energy life form, the minds of those with a lower level of life form would probably be filled with question marks. Then, if he said this to himself, it would be I don't know what Feng Ling is. He was not joking. He really did not know what he was. 5 minutes ago, the heavenly origin gods had discussed on the spot and only gave him a tentative name, derivative of nothingness and origin. It was such a long name that he was embarrassed to use it as a prefix for himself. However, since he did not go out to recognize people for many years, he probably did not need to use this name. Who cares? Are you that conflicted? As if she had seen him frown for too long, she couldn't help but say, Actually, it doesn't matter much, does it? Based on my understanding of you, you don't seem to care much about it, do you? It's one thing for me to say that. Yin Nuoxing's wrinkled face quickly shook for a while before recovering. But to be declared as a separate entity is a little conflicted. Ahem, let's not talk about this. What did you say I could do? What do you mean by try? She looked at him for a while and confirmed that he did not seem to care. She reached out her hand to check his condition. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, she continued, derivative of nothingness and source. As your life essence name suggests, maybe you can try to come into contact with the nothingness environment and source environment. It's not a normal contact or stay in the environment. Instead, try to treat them as existences and try to touch them. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. The nothingness environment and source environment. One was more bad than the other. The nothingness environment. He was still used to calling it the land of nothingness. The things that existed there were just like its name, only nothingness. It was different from the void. According to conventional knowledge, the void was covered with a dense net of rules. On top of the net of rules, there was a thin layer of soil covering the rules and the conceptual layer of rules below. These two added up to the conventional knowledge of the void. As for its characteristics, it had been mentioned many times before. It had nothing. It was just a layer of foundation without any pillars. Naturally, it was useless, but at least the rules in the void were stable and had their own stable flow of rules. In short, it was a stable foundation environment. The billions of things that were derived from this foundation were what they knew as the world of order. Further down, if one crudely peeled off the void and crossed the rules and part of the concepts, what could be seen below the void was the land of nothingness. Its existence was similar to the void, but the difference was that the land of nothingness was a barren land in the true sense of the word. Even if 50% of the rules that existed, there were chaotic rules that could change at any time. It was hell, a bad place that was attacked by thunderstorms all year round. No one with a normal brain would want to live in this place. It could not be burned to death or struck to death, but it would be noisy no matter what. Compared to the land of nothingness, the environment of the void could be said to be a piece of ordinary land. Well, ordinary. What was hidden under the ordinary was that the conditions were not completely fixed, so it could derive billions of things because it was not completely fixed in things that could not change. If one continued down from this level, nothingness would be source, which was a level worse than the environment. To put it simply, nothingness's law of chaos could be seen as little children running and jumping around on the muddy road in the village. Then, nothingness's law of chaos could be seen as hundreds of millions of tyrannosauruses rampaging on the ground, living a daily life of shaking the earth and collapsing the earth. That That's about the same meaning. It was enough to understand. Just as she had said, under normal circumstances, coming into contact with these two environments could be seen as passing by. Standing in the land of nothingness and the land of origin, one could look at the chaotic scene here and sigh, and immediately become a philosopher and sit down to think. Perhaps one could instantly become a sage and understand the great principles of life. What she meant by coming into contact was that she wanted him to stay, and she did not even set up a shelter to stabilize the foundation and put up 2 shields or something. Although I don't know what you're thinking, I can roughly say that you're probably wrong. She stretched out her hand and knocked on his head to bring him back to his senses. When he looked at her with a gloomy expression, she continued, "For other people, rashly coming into contact with the land of nothingness and the land of origin without any precautions would require one to be at the primeval stage to withstand the chaos there. However, for you, just like your life form, the land of nothingness and the land of origin are just like returning to a familiar place for you." Yin Nuoxing's mouth twitched. Is it the feeling of returning to a doghouse? She raised her hand and knocked on his head. Yin Nuoxing covered his head and stuck out his tongue. What if you're wrong? Actually, I have nothing to do with the land of nothingness and the land of origin. If I were to rush into the land of nothingness to take a bath naked, wouldn't I fall into a pot of water and directly shed my skin? All of the heavenly gods of origin. This little guy sure is spouting a lot of nonsense today. She raised her head and heaved a deep sigh. Then, she turned her head away to indicate that she didn't want to look at him. However, she still continued to explain in a very serious manner. Our theories are based on many different laws and concepts. Perhaps there are differences in form, but in essence, there won't be too big of a difference. Even if our deductions are wrong and you have nothing to do with the land of nothingness and the land of origin, you'll still possess a level of power comparable to the land of nothingness and the land of origin. Given your nature, you won't be harmed in any way by entering the land of nothingness or the land of origin. If you're still feeling uneasy, you'll only need to weaken your defenses a little when you attempt to enter the land of nothingness and the land of origin. Yin Nuoxing pursed his lips. He was just feeling uneasy. He possessed immense power, so he naturally didn't fear anything. It wouldn't be a problem for him to wander through the land of origin or the land of nothingness. But what if he suddenly lost it? Then he might just pass away. All of the fear in the world stemmed from a lack of power. It was easy to understand. Although he didn't feel much fear, there was a small precondition. If he really had to walk into the land of nothingness or the land of origin without anything, he would rather find a chaotic concept body and charge into it. Even though he knew that the former's death rate and survival rate were 50-50, while the latter's death was certain, it was just a psychological problem. He was a little conflicted, and he would occasionally feel scared. However, this was a very normal fear. All right, let's change to another person. Let's change to a normal question. Asking him to charge into the land of nothingness or the land of origin naked was equivalent to asking a mortal with a body of flesh and blood to plunge into magma and thunderstorm clouds. He wouldn't be able to bring anything with him. Anyone who heard this would immediately shrink their neck and swallow their saliva, right? She stared at him as if she had seen through a lot of his mental activities and hesitation. Suddenly, she reached out her hand and placed it on his wrist. Yin Nuoxing thought that this was just a routine check, so he didn't think much about it. Then, in the next second, he was dragged away. Come! Yin Nuoxing's eyes were wide open as he was dragged to the edge of this broken land, to the thick storm cloud wall that stood at the edge. She brought him to a stop at the edge, and the two of them were only a few meters away from the cloud wall in front of them. He could clearly see the layer of blurry clouds moving quickly in front of his eyes, just like when he stood in front of the God's destruction storm and watched the storm that could destroy the void sweep past his eyes. Yin Nuoxing looked at her in confusion. At this moment, she was still holding on to his wrist. She dragged him straight to the edge of the cloud and then stepped directly into the cloud. Yin Nuoxing didn't feel that anything was wrong. In addition, she was beside him, so she didn't do anything. He just watched the layer of blurry fog hit his face, and his vision instantly became hazy. There was also some wind, a weak wind, but it didn't seem too serious. He had never experienced wind that could change directions 5 or 6 times in a minute. Other than that, there didn't seem to be anything wrong. Scratching his head with his other hand, Yin Nuoxing watched as she continued to bring him deeper. Her figure was still very bright in the fog, and it wasn't covered by the fog. It was like a star hanging in front of him to guide the way, but he didn't know where it was leading him to. She pulled him deeper into the fog. After walking for more than 10 minutes without even doing a routine check, he finally couldn't help but ask curiously, "Where are we going?" "It's just here." She spoke softly and turned to look at him. Her soft voice sounded in his soul. "This is our destination. From the moment we entered here, we have already arrived at our destination. Going deeper into the fog will only allow you to feel the situation here more clearly. This is the edge of the Broken Land, an area created by the original environment. When you and I came in, we didn't put on any defenses. It's very obvious that you didn't feel anything strange and didn't automatically put on any defenses." Yin Nuoxing, all right, she really pulled him into the lava, and they even swam in the lava for about 20 minutes. However, he really didn't put up any defenses, and he didn't feel anything strange. When he looked at the surroundings carefully, he could feel that it was indeed different from the usual environment. At every moment, it was as if there were billions of suns bombarding indiscriminately. The movements were all hidden in the dark, and it was caused by the chaotic laws rampaging here. Looking at it, it really did feel like there was a layer of fog, and it was a little blurry, as if his eyes were covered with feces. "How is it?" She reminded him softly, and Yin Nuoxing came back to his senses. He looked around for a while and scratched his head. "I don't feel anything. Just as we said, it should be like this. I don't even feel anything else." Yin Nuoxing quickly explained, "Didn't you ask me to come in contact with it directly? I didn't do anything special when I came in contact with it. I didn't achieve enlightenment on the spot, nor did I become a saint on the spot, and then release a golden light or prepare to set off fireworks on the spot." She seemed to be deep in thought after listening to him. After a while, she looked up at him. "I don't know." Yin Nuoxing, the original environment of the Broken Land is the state of the original environment of the Chaos era. It's more primitive than the original environment of your time. No, it's not because of that. Yes, with your current realm and state, you didn't feel anything strange when you stepped into this place. That's proof that you are related to the original environment. She muttered softly to herself, "Nothingness. Forget it. There's nothing strange in the original environment, and there won't be anything strange in the nothingness environment." Wait. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly raised his hand to express that he had something to say. "I went to the Source's environment last time when AI Hongyun was fighting with the Chaos Concept body. More than half of that place was Source's environment. When I went there with my shield, I saw that the shield was on the verge of collapse, as if it was being beaten by millions of Chaos soldiers. How could it? Energy is energy, and the original is the original. As you can see, even if the original does not affect us, as long as we release energy, it will still," she said as she held up an energy shield. Boom! The violent explosion sounded like a cannon being set off in the skull. It was as if billions of galaxies had exploded in the eardrums. The violent movement was like throwing a large black hole into the sun. Both of them were agitated. Then, a creaking sound came from all directions. It sounded in the left ear and drilled out from the right ear. Then it reverberated in the brain, just like inside the skull. Hiss! She quickly pulled Yin Nuoxing's hand, and only then did she put away the energy shield. The roaring sound did not disappear immediately. Although the thing that caused the violent tremors had disappeared, the movement caused by its appearance had caused a chain reaction. It was spreading further and further, and would probably not calm down for a while. However, the place where they were standing slowly regained its calmness. It was like standing in the center of a storm and watching the storm slowly dissipate from the center. Rubbing his itchy ears, Yin Nuoxing grimaced. "All right, I understand. If you wear a mask, this thing won't admit it." They left the cloud wall, and returned to the top of the palace. Looking at the edge, they could still see lightning flashing inside the cloud wall. It was the violent collision between the broken rules and the source. They could also see the movement caused by the collision spreading into the distance like a wave. After one of her ideas was verified, Yin Nuoxing felt even more dizzy. For a long time, she stared at the air in a daze. Her mind was filled with what the hell am I? During this time, she also stood beside him in a daze and checked him every 5 minutes. However, seeing that he was too distracted, she did not report the results. Anyway, it did not matter whether she said it or not. If something really happened, she would have dragged him in without a word. Yo, you still haven't come back to your senses. The figure of the young man came out from the door on the top of the temple. He looked at the two who were still looking at the air in the same posture and laughed. Still haven't figured it out? Yin Nuoxing continued to stare blankly with her goldfish eyes. The young man scratched his head and looked at her. Everything is ready. When do you think we should start? The situation is still within the ideal range. It could still evolve for a while. Let's put it aside for now. She turned her head and put her palm on his head. It's not too late to go when the situation is out of the ideal range. Are you sure you won't be strung up again if you carry him out of the state? There won't be a cliff-like situation, she said softly, and it's better for him to maintain the current state for a while. The situation of the order in this world is not good. You and I both know that. Since we have forced an unrelated task on him, we should at least give him some corresponding help. The young man turned his head to look at the sunlight and the surging cloud wall. He allowed a long sigh. This world, the escape route that I left behind back, then has really become what you said. Speaking of which, you knew it would be like this back then? Didn't you try to make a stronger defense or something? I don't know. And based on the upper and lower limits, I've already set up a corresponding defense and a second defense, but she shook her head. As you can see, it's just an inference of the future based on the situation back then. When the disaster comes, even if there's a warning, there is no way to know the exact situation when the disaster happens. All we can foresee is an avalanche. We can't accurately see what each snowflake does and whether there are other accidents that affect the avalanche. All right, the young man turned his head and looked at the young man who was still in a daze. So you see him as hope? Just like the 771 paths, none of the other paths could be taken. So they treated him as one of the paths? Hope? Escape route? She shook her head again. The order doesn't talk about hope. It shouldn't talk about hope. As for the escape route, it's not like that. He is mine. Ugh, the young man shrugged. I'm stuck. It's a pity that I didn't say it. Chapter 1908. Inheritors. To them, inheritors were their own students, apprentices, juniors, and agents. With their age, they were more used to calling them children. Perhaps they would be straightforward and not deliberately arrange their identities between each other. They would just treat them as friends, interesting people, and interact with each other casually. However, she could not understand it very well. Looking at the real history of the Grand Yuan realm, more than 300 years had passed. She had come into contact with countless beings of order, but none of them could truly become her inheritor. Perhaps the will of destruction was too powerful, and the void in the Grand Yuan realm did not need more wills of destruction. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, no one could inherit her power. It could not be continued, nor could it be passed on. But it did not matter. To her, there was no particular need for her to deliberately pass on her power to another person. Just like how she viewed the order and void from a neutral point of view, she did not care if the inheritors existed or not. It was not a big deal for her to travel alone, and there were some things that she preferred to do on her own. Some things? Well, it was just a war between order and chaos. That was all she had to do. Handing it over to others might not be reliable, and she would not be able to accurately determine what would happen in the future. Just like the 771 paths that all of them had prepared together. Even if she deduced that the paths left in the dark would encounter undetectable accidents based on the changes in the void, she could not prevent it from happening. They could not know what would happen in the future and to what extent it would affect them. All they could do was to predetermine a vague outcome. as if it was an established fact. That was an idea that had not changed for more than 300 years. At the very beginning, she might have had some expectations, but in the end, those expectations were all wiped clean by time. It was also when she felt that there was no need to pay attention to the matter anymore. He came. The void sent him to her, foreseeing his appearance and arrival more than 10 eras in advance. An indescribable person who regarded order and chaos as nothing, as if it did not matter whether the void was ruled by order or chaos. If not for the existence of his own concerns within order, he might have pulled himself away from the never-ending war, even if he belonged to order. That was what everyone thought. But in her eyes, he was just a person with a shield and a spear. His most commonly used excuse was that he still had some concerns within order, an excuse to deceive himself and others. Or rather, if he did not give himself a reason, he might not be able to find a path that he knew would lead him to a loss. Just like how he did not think that order and chaos were harmful, the reason he stayed within order was that he had found a sufficient reason for himself. That was why he would never stop moving forward until the end of his life and time. She had been watching him since a long, long time ago. Perhaps since she foresaw his appearance in advance, she had been watching him. With just a vague connection, she could search for the shadow of the uncertain future that would only exist in his future. Those were the shadows that he would leave behind on the millions of paths in the world. In the end, only one of them would be captured by the void, turned into an established fact, and carved into the void. But it did not matter. She was just curious to see what kind of nature this person who would be involved with her in the future was. That's why you watch from the beginning to the end. Even when the void truly sent him to you, you were still just watching. The young man shrugged and glanced at the little one who was still sitting on the ground, hugging her knees in a daze. Then, did you see anything? She tilted her head. I'm watching. The light on the young man's body flickered for a while. In other words, she could not see anything. She was trying very hard to stare, but still could not see anything. It was a lie. If the nature of observation was to determine whether he was a qualified heir, it had already been determined long ago. In fact, it did not even need to be determined at all. In the 33rd era, the void had sent him and her meeting in advance to them. It could even be considered as an established fact, a result of observation that had already been completed. And based on that foresight, it had kept it and did not deliberately distort anything. It was a lie. She was also lying. She knew that she had already finished her observation. Her observation, based on the fact that he was an inheritor, had ended long ago. However, inheritor, just as she had said earlier, everyone treated inheritors as their own students, friends, juniors, and so on. Then to her, he was her what? From the aspect of the war between order and chaos, she was not clear. She did not need the so-called heir to inherit power, nor was she interested in students or whatnot. That was the truth. So she could not define who he was to her based on that aspect. Then from another aspect, what else could it be? I don't know. Perhaps he himself doesn't know. Judging from his resistance to their existence, I can guess a little. Although that resistance isn't a genuine resistance. It's more like he wants to complain. He complains that they force things that should be handled by them onto him, and he complains that they left behind too many messes. Yin Nuoxing suddenly came back to her senses. She looked up with her eyes wide open. Seeing that she had just finished an inspection, she subconsciously asked, "What's the situation now?" "The awakening of the world core is good. It is strengthening the connection between you two. Don't worry," she replied softly. Then, she mentioned another situation. "The core of order is slowly evolving. The awakening of the world core is also slightly slower. It's your energy flow that is insufficient." Yin Nuoxing was speechless. Did that mean that the energy flow that he could pass through in one go was too small for his current state? Then, should he use the rules, order, energy form now? It would definitely increase the flow of energy by tens of thousands of times in an instant. There's no need to deliberately increase the speed of the evolution. Your current state is already the best. Forcefully interfering with their evolution speed will have the opposite effect on you. She saw through his thoughts. and shook her head. The effect on me. All right, you two seem to have mentioned something about an ideal state. What is it? Yin Nuashing opened her eyes wide. When she was in a daze, just now, the two of them had said something in front of her that she did not understand. She was quite concerned about it. The young man was stunned. Weren't you thinking about life, just now? How did you notice what we were talking about? Yin Nuashing put her hands on her hips. Not completely. I only noticed a little. So, what were you talking about just now? The awakening of the world core and the evolution of the core of order. She turned to look at him and slowly explained, when the heart of the realm awakens, it will absorb a large amount of energy. At the same time, it will release an enormous amount of power of laws and order. The power that belongs to us will slowly change the power that you hold in your hand. However, you won't be able to absorb much of it. Most of the energy, laws, and order will be absorbed by the core of order. Yin Nuashing pointed at herself. So, I'm just a transfer station. The two of them are playing a game in my body, and I'm the venue. She nodded slightly. That's the gist of it. At this time, the speed of their release and absorption is still within the range that you can bear. When you can't bear their gradually increasing flow, you should. Yin Nuashing spread her hands out. Come on, string me up. Do it. I won't resist. You don't have to. I just need to take you to the sanctuary of creation. The young man did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why do you like to talk about being strung up so much? About that. Yin Nuashing lowered her head and twirled her long hair. You'll know when you're strung up. That's a psychological trauma. If you feel that stringing you up isn't traumatizing enough, then when you're strung up, let a group of people stand below and raise their heads to stare at you. Then you'll know how close the trauma is to hell. Forget it. I don't want to know. The two twin-person rotation things in his stomach were actually placed on the spiritual level, but in his energy body, one was placed in his heart, and the other was in his stomach. These two things were spinning and spinning, and as he watched, he saw what she said. The light in his heart was absorbing energy, the energy of the void, and his energy. It was spinning at a very fast speed, and it was spinning vertically. As it spun, it threw out origin energy and origin rules. The energy from the top went in and out, and the energy from the bottom went in. It spun like a spinning top. The pure origin energy and origin rules that were thrown out would spin in his soul, and then surge into the lump in his stomach. At this moment, the latter, it looked like it was frozen. Its spinning speed was obviously much slower than before. Just by looking at the way it flashed with energy, it seemed like some unknown changes were happening inside, and he wanted to reach out and poke it a few times. Then, he reached out his hand and poked his belly twice, causing her and the young man to stare blankly. This child seems to be a little obsessed. It's like his soul has been hit hard. The young man could not help but say to her in the soul, "Why don't you check his soul when you take him to the sanctuary of creation? It seems that he's hurt quite badly." She turned her head and glanced at him. She reached out and pressed Yin Nuashing, who was doing some unknown self-examination. After a moment, she nodded gently. "It's about time. Let's go." Yin Nuashing nodded and spread her arms. "Come, I'm ready." The young man covered his face with his palm. She looked at him up and down for a while. She then raised her hand and carried him directly to the sanctuary of creation. When he raised his hand, Yin Nuashing was prepared to be tied up and hung up, but he did not expect to be carried out. No, not carried like a cargo, but in front of her. This kind of posture, he might as well run over himself, especially when he saw her carrying him and rushing into the core of the creation sanctum. As soon as he pushed open the door, he saw dozens of white figures turn around and look at him in unison. Then, the light on their bodies surged crazily, as if to express their surging emotions. At that moment, he simply wanted to dig a hole in the land of origin and hide in it as if he did not know anything. Then, thinking about the situations that often happened to him, he suddenly had an idea. He quickly closed his eyes and pretended to faint. Anyway, when he appeared in other people's hands, he was either unconscious or dying. This was an abnormal situation, so he might as well pretend that it wasn't abnormal. The girl and the others were also startled when they saw the little guy being carried in again. They quickly went up to him. "What's wrong? Did something happen because you didn't calculate the time?" She and the young man looked down and saw that this guy was pretending to be asleep. The young man shrugged. "No, I calculated the time. It's just time. You're not young anymore. Stubbornness and arrogance are engraved in your bones. Now that you're being carried in, you feel ashamed, right? Let's not expose you this time. Let's see if you still want to talk about being strung up next time." "So it's as planned?" The girl stared at Yin Nuashing, who had just been placed on the hospital bed, and turned to look at her. "If so, we'll prepare it right away." "No, change the plan. Don't take it out." She shook her head. "Let the heart of the world and the core of order fuse. Then, let them fuse into his soul." Everyone present was startled. The young man suddenly clapped his hands. Stop, stop, stop. I've never heard of something like this before. Didn't we say that to prevent more uncontrollable situations, we decided to take them out? It's just that before we take them out, we'll let them give this little guy a few more layers of strengthening or something. It's supposed to be like this. It's just that. We've noticed some new reasons. We can change the plan." Everyone was startled. It was as if their breathing had stopped. Yin Nuashing, who was lying on the bed, frowned. Her face was full of pain. "Again? What kind of weird situation is this again?" Glancing at Yin Nuashing, who was still pretending to be asleep, she looked at the young man and the others. She seemed to be explaining to them, but she was actually talking to someone who was pretending to be asleep. The previous deduction and verification have confirmed that he's related to the source and nothingness. If that's the case, fusing the core of order with the heart of the world, and then fusing them into his soul will not cause any abnormalities. This is the best solution I can think of after confirming his vague essence. Yin Nuashing's face was full of confusion. "Why don't you think about it again? We're not in a hurry, right? We have to be careful. If we fuse some weird things into his soul, he always feels that, he's already weird enough. If we just stuff some random things into his soul, wouldn't it turn into a garbage dump? Someone come an object. Oh, that's fine. If you say it's okay, then it shouldn't be a problem." The young man and the others nodded in agreement without much thought. Yin Nuashing, "Why don't you guys object?" After struggling for a while between the two choices of awkwardness and becoming a garbage dump, Yin Nuashing was about to sit up and say that she wanted to object. But then, she felt a hand pressing on her forehead. Her energy, which she could not be more familiar with, suddenly drilled into her mind. Her consciousness suddenly became blurry. "Then we'll proceed according to the previous arrangement. You guys get ready to create some. I'll stabilize the soul." A dazed voice drifted into her ears. Yin Nuashing could clearly feel that her consciousness and soul were drifting away. She could not help but smile bitterly in her heart. It's over. I've directly knocked her out with a slap. Now I can't even speak. When I open my eyes this time, I'm afraid that there will really be some weird things in my eyes. Just when Yin Nuashing thought that he would fall into a deep sleep and was prepared to wake up after a few days, he suddenly felt a rapid fall. His consciousness suddenly became clear. He could clearly feel that he had plunged headfirst into an abyss and was being pulled down by gravity. The whole feeling lasted for about a minute before he suddenly realized that he was falling. That was it. After that, he did not react at all. It was as if he could feel that he was falling. He knew that if he maintained this posture, he might leave a mark on the ground. But he did not move for a long time. It was as if his body had rejected his control. He knew that he was going to die, so he had to do something quickly. His body indicated that it was stunned. Yes, it was this strange feeling. Although he did not know what was happening at this moment and what kind of situation he was in, his body was stunned. He just needed to give a stronger hint. I'm going to die. Hurry up and move, you idiot. Perishing together with himself didn't sound fun at all. Are you going to wet the bed in your dreams? His eyes suddenly came into contact with the light again. Countless rays of light broke through the darkness like the sudden emergence of the sky. His vision instantly returned to normal. At the same time, a strange scene appeared in his vision. An upside-down, blood-red sky and land appeared in his vision. There were mountains in the distance, black clouds and fog. The land looked like a sandy desert, but a little further away, it had a texture like ice. In the extreme distance, there were mountains as sharp as blades rising from ground. They pointed downwards like pillars hanging upside down in the sky. Huh? Hanging upside down? Yin Nuashing was stunned for 2 seconds. The whistling wind blew his robe and long hair. He suddenly recovered from the shock of seeing a strange place. He was falling. Bang! He fell from the sky like a javelin and landed heavily on the ground with his face on the ground. Yin Nuashing could feel himself bouncing up 1 or 2 meters with a bang. His whole body trembled violently for a while. Although his body's reaction had subconsciously completed a somersault when he bounced up, but his face hurt. Yin Nuashing waved his hand to disperse the blood-red smoke in front of him. He covered half of his numb face, and tears came out of his eyes. His voice became muffled. "It hurts. I'm flat." Yin Nuashing rubbed his face to regain some of his senses. Only then did he really start to look at this strange place. The space was a strange space. The blood-red ground was covered with jagged rocks. The mountain range that was as sharp as a spear blade rose from the ground from far to near. The blood-red sky was covered with black clouds. In addition, there was a strange light blue net all over the sky. The net cut the whole sky into many squares of different sizes. The squares were uneven, and most of them were not completely closed. They were like lines that kept spreading out horizontally and vertically, but would not touch each other. They spread out disorderly and tried not to collide with each other. Together, they formed a large net like the one in front of him. The light blue net released a circle of white light every 1 or 2 minutes and streaked across the sky at a speed that was not very fast. Every time it streaked across a place, he could see the light blue net flashing as if responding to it. So, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. What the hell is this place? He fell from the sky. Beneath his feet was a flat ground. The ground was not as fancy as the sky. It was just a sandy ground and not very solid. He could see a big pit where he had just landed. If the impact was smaller, he might have been able to find his face. Looking up at the sky and the earth for a long time, he scratched his head. Other than the white halo that appeared in the sky every 1 or 2 minutes, there seemed to be no other movement. This place was like a dead world. Other than the topographic distribution, he could see mountains, valleys, and peaks. He could not see anything else. He felt that there should not be any living creatures in this place. Judging from the color of the blood red and the black clouds, it was a bit like the hell that Xiaoxi had told him. He was talking about the space called hell in the realm of the gods. But it seemed that this place did not exist during the Dark Age. It also did not exist during the Ancient Age. At this time, the second divine duty did not nag him about the existence of hell. It was probably the same as the demon realm. It was built by the later life. For some reason, it was built. In that case, this place shouldn't be that place. Moreover, he was slapped into this place by her, so this should be a space related to them. Yin Nuashing scratched his head and looked up. Even after looking for a long time, he could not find any clues. He fell from the sky, and there was only a strange and incomprehensible scenery around him. The sky did not look like the pure sky, and the ground did not look like the complete ground. It was a sandy and blood-red ground. But if he was not surprised, it should be a piece of ice. Even the aura in the air made him feel that something was not right. He had been to many worlds, but the number of times he encountered something so strange was not many. Although it is a bit confusing, but according to the custom of trespassing, Yin Nuashing condensed the energy in his finger into an energy stick and stabbed it into the ground. He let it fall in a random direction, then waved his hand and walked forward. Anyway, let's go forward first. Chapter 1909. It was a strange place, a true barren land. Although the term could be used as a comparison, almost half of the void was considered barren for beings of their level. Even if it was not such a barren land, but a bustling city, he could still point at the city and say that it was a barren land. Its energy was too barren. No matter how bustling it looked, it was barren. Therefore, this was a time to be clearer. For example, this land illuminated in blood, whether mortals or higher beings would treat it as a barren place where even birds would not shit. Moreover, staying here for too long would easily cause various mental and psychological illnesses. The environment here was so oppressive that even higher beings would frown. There was no greenery at all, and there was no telling if there were any living beings here. Even if there were, they probably did not care about greenery. But this place is really barren and very strange. Around him was a dark brown forest. The forest was not ordinary land, but a swamp that exuded a strange smell. He was now treading deeply in the swamp, holding back his disgust as he waded through it. If it were up to him, he would have wanted to fly over. But above the swamp, about 2 to 3 meters above, the sky was solid. It was a piece of space that had suddenly solidified into a huge object. Looking past the tree branches that blocked the sun, he looked up at the sky that was in the shape of a funnel, covering the sky for thousands of miles. The solidified space had swallowed the surrounding trees, but the space did not seem to have any effect on them. Instead, it was the net imprinted in the sky that was abnormal. The strange light blue net was no longer composed of neat horizontal and vertical lines where the funnel solidified. Instead, the horizontal and vertical lines had become crooked, and the entire net had become crooked like some kind of impressionist painting. No, an abstract painting. Anyone who came here would not be able to recognize that it was a net, and would only think that it was scribbled lines instead of a neat net. It was obvious that the space was distorted into such a state. Visually, it was almost as if the sky had collapsed. It just happened to be 2 to 3 meters above his head. Looking at it from such a close distance, he could clearly see the light blue twisted net. Among the large and small lines, there were actually smaller energy lines that were wrapped together. The surging light had a neat beginning and end, flashing from left to right. It made him feel that the light blue net was sending energy to somewhere from left to right. For the time being, Yin Nuashing wasn't sure if anything would happen if he touched this strange thing rashly, so he didn't touch it. Instead, he obediently waded into the swamp. Ugh, the feeling and the sound made him feel disgusted. He felt like he was going to kick something under the swamp, but he wasn't sure if it was a tree root. After wading in the swamp for more than 10 minutes, Yin Nuashing saw that the light blue net was beginning to climb little by little. After observing for a while, he emerged from the swamp and quickly crossed the swamp to come to the blood-red sandy ground. But this time, there were no trees or rugged rocks by the side of the road. In front of him was a straight sandy ground, and on both sides of the road were 2 frozen lands. The blood-red mirror reflected the appearance of the sky, and the light blue net was clearly reflected. Upon closer inspection, this place was a bit similar to the space in the realm of the gods, the conceptual and abstract space where the origin energy was sealed. 5 years ago, when he went to restart the primordial god's protection, he went there once. But if he really wanted to compare it to that place, well, since they were both conceptual spaces, the space in the realm of the gods, whether it was the sky, the land, or anything else, the appearance of the materialized products formed by the laws in this space was very different from the original appearance of the space in the real world. So if this blood-red sky and land in front of him were a conceptual space of laws, then the things contained in it corresponded to the space in the real world. Which things were which things? He didn't know. He couldn't recognize it. He didn't even feel the aura of rules and order. It was as if they were telling him that everything that existed in this space was pure, and that the materialization of concepts was just his imagination. Looks like you floated to an unexpected place. The voice that suddenly sounded in his soul startled Yin Nuashing. He instantly turned around and looked at his surroundings. There was no one. Stunned, he looked up at the sky and asked, "Who's talking?" "Wait a moment. I'm coming." Yin Nuashing was looking up at the sky in a daze because of the voice that suddenly sounded. Suddenly, some white cloud energy floated out of his body. Something was coming out of his body and then landed in front of him, condensing into a figure made of white light. Yin Nuashing looked at her with his eyes wide open. How did you get out of my body? Body? She shook her head slightly. It's consciousness and soul. I'm chasing your consciousness and soul that have drifted away. Drifted away? Yin Nuashing pointed at himself. Where did my soul float to? Am I not still lying in the sanctum of creation? You knocked me out with a single slap. I'm just guiding you into a deep slumber. She shook her head lightly and stroked her long hair casually. The matter in the sanctum of creation has already been completed. We were about to guide you to wake up, but we found that your consciousness and soul had disappeared. They didn't stay in a body that was projected in the broken land, so I chased after them. Yin Nuashing. All right, this talent of sneaking away had already reached the soul. They didn't even know when it came out. This was probably already at the acme of perfection. However, this sounded a little strange. When he entered that dilapidated land, didn't he enter with his consciousness and soul? Then his soul ran away. Logically speaking, he should have woken up. What was the meaning of the body that was projected there? Your connection with the broken land is based on our energy and the sea of consciousness that has completed the reconstruction. Your soul and consciousness did not leave your body and come here. Instead, with your soul and consciousness as a bridge, a body formed by your consciousness and soul is projected in the broken land. For the time being, you could say that you have two bodies at the same time. One is sleeping in the real world, and the other is with us. Your soul and consciousness came here from the body in the real world. Yin Nuashing. It sounds like my soul has left my body. She nodded lightly. To put it simply, this is indeed the case. Moreover, the two spaces are islands that are separated by the sea of consciousness. They will never be able to touch each other. The only ones affected are you, the bridge itself, and the user. No one else can touch this bridge. Yin Nuashing nodded and made a sound to show that he understood. But even if he did not understand, the problem was not particularly big. To put it simply, his body in the observer space was just an empty body. His soul and consciousness should have run out to take a stroll. He was busy wandering around the land of origin, and then, as he was wandering, the soul and consciousness of the body on the land of origin suddenly ran away again. Then she felt that something was wrong and followed the traces left by his soul all the way here. It was ridiculous. Not only did his soul leave his body, but he even left his body twice. He didn't know what kind of strange thing he had cultivated that finally made him crazy. This wasn't as simple as having his soul leave his body. This was more like having his soul split. And it felt a little strange to see her come out of his body. Forget it. He didn't want to think too much about it. He felt that more strange ideas would pop up if he continued to think about it. Okay, I understand the cause and effect. No, I don't understand. So where am I? And why am I here? Yin Nuashing just nodded and shook her head vigorously. I don't have the habit of wandering around in my sleep. I definitely don't. It's not that I don't. She looked at him and then looked at the blood-red world. I don't know why. We only found that your soul left your body, but we didn't find out why it came here. We'll have to wait for a while to find out the specific reason. As for where this place is, she turned to look at him. Don't you feel the atmosphere here? Or don't you recognize it? What atmosphere? I don't feel anything. Yin Nuashing shook his head vigorously. In just a short while, he almost shook his head until it flew out. Could it be that this is some strange place related to you? No, it's not related to us, but... no, you can say that. But it's not only related to us. She looked up slightly and seemed to take a deep breath. Then she slowly said to Yin Nuashing, this is the source environment. The source environment, and it's the source environment of the chaos era. It's normal that you don't feel it. First, you are related to the source environment. When there are no fluctuations in the laws, it's really difficult to feel the abnormality here. Look, this is the second time you've come into contact with the source environment in a short period of time. Once again, it proves that there's nothing wrong with you merging with the source environment. Yin Nuashing, okay, I get it. The source environment. The source environment. Yin Nuashing held his head and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then, where's this place? You said this place is not related to you. Then what is this place? The source environment. Don't tell me this is a space related to the chaos concept body? No, this space has nothing to do with the chaos concept body and has nothing to do with us. This place. She turned to look at him, and when he put on a shocked expression, she said softly, should be a space related to you. His Yin Nuashin gasped. But before he could start to fill in the blanks, he heard her continue. The source environment of the chaos era originated from the first light. It's the atmosphere that made up this space. So what's left is only things and things related to you. In other words, this space is a space related to you. Me? Related to me? Yin Nuashing turned to look at the place and took a deep breath. His face was wrinkled. This godforsaken place was actually related to him. This godforsaken place was all blood red. No, he always felt that this should be her color. The destruction energy was red and black. Although the colors did not match perfectly, but could it be his own destruction energy? He thought about it carefully. When he used the destruction energy purely, it seemed to be red and black. Could it be that the entire space was a manifestation of something that he owned? Is there a more specific way to put it? Yin Nuashing subconsciously reached out to pull her and pointed at his wrinkled face. I'm walking in my own body or something. It sounded a little weird. Oh, that's not the case. I've already said that the atmosphere here is related to the primordial environment of the primordial chaos era. Only the space itself here is related to you. Everything else is basically created from the primordial environment. Be it the color of the sky or the ground, they are all colored by the primordial environment. She raised her finger and pointed up, then shook her head at him. Originally, this concept manifestation space that is related to oneself could be stripped layer by layer, stripped of everything that is stained in this body and restored to the original self. That is to say, you can see the essence of a life's birth, but you are completely merged with the first light, so you can't strip the source environment of this place. You can only make do with it. Yin Nuashing, it's just that I've stained myself with too many colors. But since I'm related to the source environment, I guess the environment created by my true self is not too different from what I'm seeing now. She shook her hand and turned around to grab his hand and led the way forward. Come this way. The old horse seemed to know the way and seemed to know where to go and what to see there, which made Yin Nuashing very curious. But just now, he thought of another question. Hey, do you think I'm the original sea of the sea of consciousness? Ah, this was not nonsense. It had been almost 90 eras since the beginning of time, and he did not have any impression of the sea of consciousness. But this thing stubbornly stayed in his soul, from the Dark Age to the Ancient Age to the 139th era, and still clinging to him like a dog's skin ointment. How could he not be suspicious? She shook her head and denied it. The birth condition and method of the sea of consciousness has nothing to do with the source environment, even if its existence is quite mysterious. But one thing is for sure, its ladder level is not as high as the source environment. Stripping the sea of consciousness and throwing it into the source environment will destroy it. But when stripping as the current carrier of a sea of consciousness, you may suffer damage to your consciousness and soul. I didn't say stripping. I'm just guessing if it has something to do with me. Yin Nuashing muttered. After all, I didn't know that the sea of consciousness was with me. It was only when you guys mentioned it that I knew that I had such a thing hidden in my body, so I thought, if that is the case, there is a reason for suspicion. However, the sea of consciousness would not give birth to life, just as it would not become life itself. It is an environment in itself, and such environments are exceedingly chaotic and unstable. The environment would not be stable for long periods of time, unable to use stable energies and rules to weave and construct life, and hence unable to give birth to life. For the void, the most difficult process of birth would be origin life forms, and even they would have a tiny cradle of their own when they were first born. It is a stable space with a loophole, and it is precisely because it is sufficiently peaceful that origin life forms could be born. Oh, Yin Nuashing replied dryly. He had just thought of it, and he was not sure himself. He looked down and saw that she was holding his hand and walking in front of him. The wrinkles on her face appeared again. It did not feel right to say that she was leading the way. It felt like she was leading a 3 or 2-year-old child so that he would not die as he walked. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. Just now, when they went through the cloud wall in the broken land, he was also led by her like this. He quickly took 2 steps forward and walked side by side with her. Then he turned his head and looked at the two of them walking hand in hand. Hey, isn't this even more wrong? Forget it. God knows what he was feeling conflicted about. Anyway, ever since he met them, the number of wrinkles on his face had increased. If it weren't for the fact that he was immortal and didn't pretend to be an old monster, not only would he have wrinkles on his head, but other wrinkles would also have appeared. So, where are we going? He looked up at the road ahead. The light blue lines on the ice on both sides of the road were rapidly retreating as they walked forward. He looked at the sky and still could not see anything different. Go forward to where we should go. She raised her other hand and pointed forward, using her colorful origin energy to leave a clear path ahead. The deepest part of the concept manifestation space is not fixed. Every time we enter, it will appear in a different place. It is the most difficult thing to find in itself. It may be difficult to find by oneself, but it is very easy for others to find that place. So, most people who come to the concept manifestation space will find another person to help them. However, not many people come here often. But even if it is difficult to find by oneself, can't we find it slowly? A little difficult does not mean that it is completely impossible. It just takes a little more time. Yin Nuashing scratched his head, not understanding the necessary relationship between the two. The concept manifestation space is equivalent to turning one's consciousness and soul into a state of disintegration. Furthermore, it is a state of deep disintegration, and it cannot be maintained for too long. Therefore, to find the concept manifestation space, unless one is already extremely familiar with this space and is already quite experienced, even if it is one's own place, one can only rely on pure luck. Yin Nuashing. So, I am now in a state of disintegration? Don't worry, I have already stabilized your body, consciousness, and soul before we came. You just have to find the exit at the center within the specified time. I'm familiar with this place, just follow me. She said softly, as if afraid that he would be too worried, and even squeezed his hand. Don't worry. Yin Nuashing. No, you really don't have to use such a strange tone. It seems quite normal. He just felt strange. Well, it was his turn to think nonsense all day long, and he had no right to criticize Hui. According to the situation of this space, it should be able to last for 20 hours and more than 5 minutes. However, it seems that there is only about 5 hours left. I should have come in a little late, but there is still no need to be nervous. If anything happens, they will guide your soul back from the outside and forcibly guide it back. It will not be too much of a problem. What you mean is you may have to lie in the sanctuary of creation for a day or two. Let's hurry. Oh, the bed renewal fee, right? He got it. He just didn't know why he ended up in this place. While he was still muttering in his mind, Lin Sanjiu pulled him to walk faster. It seemed like she was right about time. Speaking of which, when he came in, he didn't seem to have wandered around for 15 hours. Could it be that he didn't even realize that he had wasted some time while he was here? By the time he hit the ground face first, more than 10 hours had passed. What is that? Yin Nuashing asked instinctively when he came back to his senses and noticed that there was something in front of him. Looking at the spectacular scene in the distance, he could not help but take a deep breath. That was a stream of light or a stream of water. It was not clear. It seemed to be made up of countless flowing things, such as countless visible lights, or simply thousands of tiny streams of water pieced together. The overall color was still blood red, but the surface was covered with dislocated, densely packed lines of different colors. It was a riot of colors, like a dark river dotted with fireflies. It had a very silky feel. It was not clear whether it was a stream of light or a stream of water. In short, it was something that was flowing. For the time being, it was a mighty waterfall. However, it was a waterfall that rushed from the bottom to the top. It surged up from the ground and rushed to the sky, perhaps thousands of miles high. Then, it split from the top, as if it had turned into thousands of pieces of cloth and spread in all directions. It was a very strange feeling. Looking at the part that rose to the sky from the bottom, his senses clearly told him that it was something like a stream of water, whether judging from the texture or the details. But when it rose to the top and separated, it turned into cloth and silk-like texture again. The pieces of cloth and silk that spread across the sky and earth did not spread over their heads. They stopped about 100 or 200 miles away. Standing there, he could still feel that the cloth seemed to be fluttering in the wind. As they fluttered, he felt that they were streams of light, and the slightly transparent tail with dislocated colors looked like the aurora. His senses were already in a mess. The visual contradiction of this thing was too strong. It's not a visual problem. It has switched 3 times in your perception, just like the 3 forms that you recognize. She explained softly, the things shown in the concept manifestation space are all related to your cognition. The more you know, the more complicated and the more vague it is, the easier it is for an object to appear in many forms in front of you, and none of them will make you suspicious at all. This is because those things are basically pieced together by similar things that you have seen before. The more you know and encounter, the more things and forms will appear in front of you. As she said, she suddenly pulled him in a circle and deliberately came in front of the thing that looked like a stream of light, a waterfall, a silk, and an aurora. She deliberately passed by it. And when she passed by, she reached in and touched it in front of him, but her hand did not really grab anything. Look, it's just an illusion. This part of the conceptual manifestation is just an illusion. No matter how real it is in your eyes, there is no way you can touch it. With a 100% difference in mood, Yin carefully reached out his hand to touch it. Actually, it felt a little like as if he put his hand into an area where strong wind was blowing. He could clearly feel something brushing past his palm. Just hanging on the side, it did look a little beautiful. If it were not for the death omen above his head that reminded him that his bed was about to be renewed, he might have stood here for a while to look at it. This scene was rare, so it was good to see more of it. She seemed to know what he was thinking. She pulled him with her hand and flew away. Yin kept looking back. After a few minutes, the magnificent Aurora Silk Waterfall, the name that he just came up with, was completely out of sight. He turned back to look at the front. In front of him was still the blood-red land, and the ground was still the same sandy ground. However, it was no longer a plain that could be seen at a glance. The ground was covered with cracks. Looking down from the sky, it looked like a crack, but if he went down to see it in person, he would be able to tell that it was a crisscrossing abyss. They seemed to have come to a land that was about to disintegrate. Even the mountains in the distance had changed from slender blades to endless mountains and precipitous ridges. This strange scene of crisscrossing abyss and precipitous ridges made Yin a little curious about what this part of the manifested concept meant to him. Was it something that he had known before, or specifically, what did it mean to him? Well, he was a little curious, but he could not see it at all. It seemed that he could understand what she meant by "it's hard to find." She turned to look at his curious eyes and said softly, "If you are really curious, I can help you see." No. Yin shook his head vigorously. "You are kidding. If she saw it, wouldn't it be the same as opening up his soul to them?" Well, it didn't seem to be that bad, right? Anyway, he had no secrets in front of them. No. Even if he knew that they knew, and even if they knew that he knew, he must not nod his head at this moment. Having his dark history dug out behind his back and having it read out in front of him were two different things. Moreover, this was a group of people who were watching him as a show. That was even worse. This was social suicide. Chapter 19:10. He had been to 2 conceptual spaces. One was the one in the realm of the gods, and the other was here. It was a place related to himself. Both places were equally magical and abstract. It was like a great painter who was drunk and suddenly had an epiphany and casually waved his brush, and sprinkled ink to create something magical and abstract. The onlookers expressed that they could not understand it, but they felt that it was very impressive. In fact, this thing might really be just graffiti, but the great painter was too embarrassed to say it when he saw the onlookers praising him. After all, a painter was just a painter. What did he know about painting? In this colorful and bizarre place, the things presented in front of him were basically essence. To be precise, based on a certain kind of cognition, the essence manifested. Billions of things in the world would manifest in countless ways because of billions of cognition. Even if its essence did not change at all, and it was what it was supposed to be, it would naturally have different appearances in the eyes of different people. This was also a scenery that belonged to everyone. Of course, the premise was that this bizarre and abstract scene that made one's head hurt happened to meet someone's gaze, and that person could sit down and admire it. In any case, in his opinion, this ever-changing and bizarre place did have some pretty good sceneries, but it was too dazzling. After looking at it for a long time, it was easy to feel that one's brain and eyes were out of sync, and one could not tell who was dragging who down. Yin Nuoxing could not help but look away from a big tree that was upside down. What kind of strange cognition could manifest such a strange thing here? A tree with a crown buried in the ground, and its roots spreading wildly towards the sky. Did he hit his head somewhere and come up with this strange cognition? Shaking his head, Yin Nuoxing looked up at the sky and then at the land in front of him. The blood-red land had returned to its original appearance of a boundless plain. The strange ice surface and lofty mountains were only minor adjustments that occasionally appeared. Even more occasionally, there were things that were clearly out of the norm, such as the upside-down tree just now. There were other things that he could not be bothered to mention. After seeing it with his own eyes, he would know why it was so abstract. There were not many things in this place that were normal. It might be better if he did not bring his brain in, but if he really wanted to fuss over every single thing, he might have already lost his mind by the time he left. After a few days, he would enter again after tidying up his cognition, and he might see a completely reconstructed concept manifested space, and then even more strange things. Well, he had found a strange way to refresh his cognition. This was him refreshing his cognition with himself, round after round without stopping. After he was done, he could probably solemnly put it in a box and worship it or bury it, because it had already been refreshed to the point that it was cold. He reckoned that there was no end to this strange space. For someone like him who knew about the void and nothingness, the concept of infinity definitely existed. Regardless of whether it was a tree by the roadside or a green onion, as long as it really existed, this was definitely not a space of limited size, unless he wanted to compete with himself and insist that this space was limited. We're almost there. Her voice echoed softly in his ears. Yin Nuoxing turned his head and focused on her. He saw that she raised her hand and pointed to the distance ahead. After crossing the boundary here, you will be close to the core of the manifested space. Even if the concept and cognition are in a state of infinity, as long as you follow its own trajectory, you will be able to find the deepest part of the core. It was still a human language, but Yin Nuoxing expressed that he might not be able to understand what was going on in this space. Anyway, he really did not see anything else. Other than strange things, there were even stranger things in his sight. Actually, she did not need to remind him. After all, she was the one pulling him and flying. He was just pretending to be serious and following beside her. In order to avoid looking like an adult holding a child's hand, he was trying very hard to fly beside her. Besides, his mind was in a mess now. He was almost at the limit of his mental endurance when he refreshed himself. If he continued to refresh himself, he might be blown into a box and sunk into nothingness. So, he decided to give up thinking and brain. For now, he would just be a fool and not know anything. For the next period of time, Yin Nuoxing was focused on being dragged along. Time without thinking was a bit torturous, but he really did not want to see those strange things anymore. After thinking about it, he simply counted the minutes and seconds. We have reached the boundary. Wait a minute. Let me check the surroundings. We are close to the threshold of time. There may be some changes at the boundary. She suddenly spoke, interrupting him while he was counting. She left him where he was and floated to the side. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. He had forgotten how long he had been counting. He simply looked up at the boundary that she mentioned and then sighed with a headache. Sure enough, it was another thing that looked very abstract. The thing in front of him was a light curtain of aurora hanging from the sky to the ground like a curtain covering the entire space in front of him. He tried to look up and see the edge of the light curtain that was close to the illusory top. The moment he saw the transparent part at the top of the aurora curtain suddenly became solid, and the transparent part suddenly extended upward for a long distance. He followed the extending transparent part with his eyes, and then he gave up. This thing also did not have an end. The aurora curtain in front of him was blood red, but hidden behind it was a grayish-white color. It was supposed to be a curtain woven by light, but when it was fluttering in front of him, it actually blew out a gust of wind with a breath of light, making it look like it had a physical body. The middle section of the curtain really seemed to be solid, like ribbons hanging down from above, constantly fluttering and changing colors. Those ribbons were also like energy reflections. Looking at them, he realized that the interior of the ribbons reflected a grayish-white energy sea, and the sea had. He was already dizzy, and he was about to split open. He felt that he could keep looking at this thing. Later, he would see something from the grayish-white sea, and then he would see more from this thing, and the cycle would keep going on and on without stopping. He approached the aurora curtain and couldn't help but reach out to touch it. In a flash, he felt as if his hand was being pulled by high-energy lightning. A wisp of blood-red lightning even wrapped around his palm. He subconsciously glanced at the lightning wrapped around his hand. It was inside. Before he could see more strange things, he quickly crushed the lightning. This space was really full of strange things. The concepts around here are a little unstable, but it's not a big deal. It won't hinder us from passing. She swayed back from the side and subconsciously grabbed his hand. She whispered, "Let's go." The concepts are not stable. Is it because we've been here for too long? It's basically like that. This space has been manifested for 18 hours, and there's not much time left. It's starting to shrink from the edge, bit by bit returning to the core in front of us. All the concepts will start to flow and shrink towards here. As the shrinking speed increases, the flow of the concepts will increase, and the space will become even more unstable. At that time, we will see the scene of all the abstract things in the space begin to collapse, until it completely reverts to the state of pure concepts. As she spoke, she began to pull him forward. Stay close to avoid any accidents. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly moved closer and looked around. He actually did not see anything, but judging from what she said, this space felt like, well, if he was a ball with a diameter of 1 meter, when this space was expanded, his diameter would expand from 1 meter to 1,000 miles, and everything inside would maintain the same ratio and begin to turn from an illusory form into a physical form. Then, when the space closed, they would return to their illusory form, squeezing back to their original position with the shrinking space. Oh, that made sense. No wonder they had to get out before the space closed. If they did not get out in time, they would be squashed by the shrinking space. When my body came into contact with the aurora curtain, I felt as if I was being massaged by a series of crackling thunderbolts. My body trembled, and I felt a numbing sensation all over my body. It seemed to be quite addictive. Cough, cough, no, actually it didn't feel that good. It was just that I knew it was a slight tingling sensation, but it wasn't particularly clear. It passed in a flash, and my body didn't even have time to react. Then, it urged me to sense it again to strengthen my memory. After stepping into the aurora curtain, the crackling sensation disappeared. Yin Nuoxing thought that he would see the gray-white sea of energy, but when he looked up, he was stunned. He did not see the sea of energy, and there was still a blood-red land in front of him, but it was beginning to fade. At this time, where he was standing, he could still see the sky and land clearly, but further away, little by little, the color was losing, as if everything was fading. Besides, he also clearly felt that something was not right. This place, this place is not covered by the concept itself? She suddenly let out a slightly surprised voice. The concepts and cognitive concepts that cover the entire space are slowly fading here. It should not be. The core of the concept manifestation space should be the place with the greatest coverage of cognitive concepts in the entire space. It is the source that is close to the essence, but here, the coverage of the concept has decreased a lot. Yin Nuashing pulled her hand. Say something that I can understand. As I said just now, all the concepts in the concept manifestation space originate from you, whether it is the cognition that you have experienced or the cognition that you have heard. All these cognition and concepts together construct the concept manifestation space that you have manifested. It is like planting countless trees in a desert. The trees are your cognition, the concepts you know, and the forest made up of countless trees is you. Their existence contains countless things that you know. In other words, you are a forest. The closer you are to the center, the more lush and dense the trees should be, but she waved her hand and gestured at the scene that was beginning to fade. The place that should be the densest is beginning to turn into a desert. Yin Nuashing scratched her pretty face. I understand. I'm a stubborn guy, so the core is no concept. That's not the case. As you said, stubborn people have a set of understanding and concepts that are too deeply rooted. They're so deep that they cannot be shaken at all. The core of their concept manifestation space is even more changeable, and the coverage of their concepts and knowledge far surpasses the periphery, and far surpasses that of other people. Yin Nuashing thought again. You can't say that I'm actually a guy without a mind of my own, can you? No, you're still wrong. No matter what the essence of life is, the core of the concept manifestation space is definitely the place with the highest coverage of cognitive concepts. After all, the things that contain the most here are everything related to oneself. If you insist on using normal circumstances to discuss your current situation, it should be said that everything related to yourself is blank. She turned to look at him and said very slowly, that is to say, you have no concept to speak of. Yin Nuashing, it's over. What kind of situation is this? Maybe your subconscious mind can't judge yourself. Or maybe you have defined yourself as something that cannot be judged. Based on your own situation, it should be the latter. However, if your consciousness and soul can't even define what you are, this shouldn't have happened. Even if you don't know what you are, your consciousness and soul have been clearly divided when you were born. Even if the concept and cognition of your own existence can't be known by yourself, it definitely exists here. It won't change because of whether you know it or not. Even if you define yourself as something that cannot be judged, you're just covering up this part of the concept and cognition that you were born with. You can still find it on the ground, but here, she was silent. She was silent. She was silent for a while. Then, she waved her hand. Let's go forward first. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. He felt that the atmosphere had changed. It was the atmosphere that came with her that had changed. It was like there was a slight feeling of uncertainty. No, he felt that something was wrong. The blood-colored sky and earth gradually faded as they moved forward, losing their color. The blood turned orange and then light brown. The things in their line of sight decreased as well. The mountains in their line of sight became shorter as they moved forward, and the valleys began to be filled up. The undulating mountains and valleys were getting closer to the flat ground, becoming flat bit by bit. He did not know what it meant, but he knew that he was getting closer to the core of the conceptual manifestation space. Everything that existed here should have revealed something about him. Yes, it should have. He was mentally prepared to ask her to see if she could find out anything about him. It would be best if she could figure out what his nature was and what kind of inhuman thing was born in the mythological era. But now, the surroundings were flat, the light brown and the light blue sky were fading, and the edges were beginning to be stained with a thin layer of light gray. There was nothing to look at, not even a hammer. After their line of sight became light gray, they were the only ones left with color. They seemed to have walked into a white paper. Everything on the white paper was like the light gray left behind by a sketch, and it continued to fade, from light gray to pale. He thought that in the end, everything would become dark and pure black. At least that would explain that the dark color was telling of the origin or nothingness. But he did not expect that everything in all directions was really fading until everything became pure white and lost all color. In fact, when everything was completely gray, it was considered to have lost all color. Perhaps the space here thought that gray was also a color, so it also got rid of the gray, leaving behind either pure white or pure black. But the current situation was pure white. She did not say much when their surroundings turned light gray. Now, she was so quiet that even the reassuring aura of the primordial god had disappeared. His perception told him that she felt very incredulous. Her expression was solemn. If she was on a battlefield, there would be hundreds of chaos concept bodies standing on the opposite side. In other words, it was almost the same level of situation. There, we've reached the core. After walking in silence for perhaps more than an hour, she suddenly broke the silence. It was a low voice, no longer faint. Yin Nuashing stopped in his tracks with her and raised his head. In the world that had already turned pure white and everything had disappeared, they saw it together. It was an oval-shaped crack that had been torn open in the sky and almost touched the ground. It looked like a crack that had been torn open by someone pulling left and right. It was also a pure white color. It looked like a transparent crack left behind by shattered glass. They could barely see its appearance as it cracked open. This should be the distortion of space. A part of space had collapsed. Otherwise, in this pure white place, with another pale white crack, they should not have been able to recognize this thing at all. This was the deepest part of the concept manifestation space. It was the core of this space, and also the place where the essence related to him was. Essence. It was the place where the essence manifested. It should be so. The concept has been pierced through. She suddenly said softly. Her voice sounded a little dazed. She raised her head slightly to look at the large, oval-shaped crack. There were many cracks of different sizes spreading out from the edge of the crack. It seemed to be still there, but also seemed to be moving. It was not very clear. In this place where all color had disappeared, it was difficult to judge with just one's eyes. Yin Nuashing's face was numb. Numb. He was already numb. Ever since he knew that he was not a human or a ghost, he had been refreshing his understanding of himself every day. Every time, he would break through the bottom line. This huge rift was probably telling her, yes, actually he has already split open. He had really F*King split open. This was a statement. Look at the huge rift hanging in the sky. His concept had already split open. If this was not a rift, then what was it? Then, what's the situation now? I've split open? Yin Nuashing pointed at the huge rift and spoke in the tone of a bystander, as if it had nothing to do with her. She took a deep breath, and her tone changed several times. Concept manifestation space. No, actually, I'm not very clear about it either. We've never seen such a situation before. Wait a moment, I'll reassess it. After she said this, the reassuring atmosphere that had just disappeared returned to her. Yin Nuashing thought that she was going to watch for a while and was about to turn around to look around. She immediately said, all right, I roughly understand what it means. Oh, what's the situation? About now? I don't know how many years ago you have been damaged by concept-level attack. This rift is the trace left behind by that attack. Yin Nuashing immediately felt a piercing pain in her heart. How many years ago was she stabbed? Calculating the time, it should be during the mythological era. Was it the time when he lost her and threw Xian Yin into the origin space? At that time, due to some unknown matter, he died without saying a word. This scar was probably left behind at that time. So, the reason why my core is like this is because of the attack that caused this strange scar. Yin Nuashing wiped her forehead. She seemed to understand. She shook her head. She softly denied it. That's not the case. Even if it's a concept-level attack, it's only related to that life of yours. Now that you have reincarnated, it has nothing to do with that injury. Moreover, if it's really a residual concept-level attack, we would have noticed it at a glance. It wouldn't take until now for me to come to the deepest part of your concept manifestation space, to find the scar left behind by a concept-level attack. It's just an antique, commemorative scar that followed you through reincarnation. Yin Nuashing was speechless. No, he did not want such a thing as a commemorative. While it was normal for veterans on the battlefield to have scars, that scar, did she not think that the scar was in a rather strange place? His internal injuries had even gone to the concept body. Just hearing about it made his heart ache. However, this thing could indeed prove that he had died in some inexplicable way back then. Yeah, something related to the power of the concept body. This must have something to do with them, or the concept body of chaos. Good fellow. He had been involved with them since the mythological era, and according to what was said earlier, he was likely to have been killed by the concept body of chaos with a single slap. That would have been a very sullen death. That's not right. If it has nothing to do with the scar, what's up with this place? Yin Nuashing scratched her head. Could it be that it looks like this? She turned to look at him. That's true. This place has always looked like this. Then, Yin Nuashing breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that it had nothing to do with the big hole. Then, she continued to scratch her head. Then what does that mean? Didn't you say that the core should have something? Remember what I said just now? You are too deeply integrated with the initial light and cannot peel off the things that cover the concept manifestation space layer by layer. Even when you reach the core, you cannot explore your essence. That should be the case, just like how the concept manifestation space of all life would cover more concepts and cognition the closer it is to the core. However, for some reason, the core of your concept manifestation space is clean. It is the essence that has been revealed after everything has been peeled off. This time, she was silent for a minute before she spoke slowly. As you can see, paleness, nothingness, that is you, that is your essence. Everything is paleness, nothingness, and meaningless. Yin Nuashing's ears and eyes hurt. Meaning? You're talking about meaning again. Meaning this thing. No, it's not meaning as you think. Life itself has no meaning. The so-called meaning is just a guide given by humans, a kind of rhetoric. The meaning I'm talking about. No, it shouldn't be meaning. The meaning here is wrong. It should be, she was dead. Yin Nuashing felt a headache coming. If it's not meaning, should I say, no concept? No. What you see before you is the essence of your concept. The paleness here is the essence of your concept. She shook her head and held her forehead with her hand. What I'm trying to say is, Yin Nuashing, don't pinch me even if you can't think of a word. It hurts. Don't tell me you're saying that I'm blank, meaningless, and something that shouldn't exist. No, existence itself is an established fact. It's meaningless to talk about it. I've also seen such paleness in the space of concept manifestation, but their entire realm is paleness. Even so, the core is still covered by concepts and cognition, because those are concepts and cognition that are closely related to them. There shouldn't be such a paleness and emptiness. Even if the layers of cognition and concept are stripped away, the true essence manifested should not be so paleness. This is not a normal thing. What I'm trying to say is, Yin Nuashing was so anxious that he almost jumped up, but he still had to hold it in and enlighten her. Don't be so agitated. Don't be anxious. Think about it slowly. I'm not the only one who has problems with the void. It must be the void. She suddenly raised her head and gave him a shock. She murmured, the void, nothingness, the primordial. Yes, I remember what I'm going to say. Your birth has no meaning. The primordial realm did not give you meaning. Even order and chaos did not give you a definition. Like I said before, maybe you came from the primordial realm and met order first, so you were infected with order. She seemed to be in a trance for a moment. After a while, she said softly in a stable voice, "You are the purest creation of the primordial realm." Chapter 1911. The birth of life in the greater Yuan realm was in itself a meaningless thing, and miracles were not. The birth of all things in the void was its own tendency, an instinct that did not need to be defined. However, no matter how powerful an instinct was, it still had to consider the environmental factors, especially the environment it created. The source of the void of order was the heavenly God of origin and the others, and the environment they created tended to be stable and peaceful to a large extent. Only places with a stable environment for a long time could give birth to life. For example, in the void of chaos, it seemed that nothing was happening on the surface, but in fact, all kinds of rules and chaos order were roaming very uneasily in the dark. To put it simply, the environment of the void of chaos was unstable, and even if a piece of land was found to cover the surface of the sea, it could not hide the undercurrents at the bottom of the sea. Because of the environment, all life that was born in the void were born of order, and this was the difference between the void of order and the void of chaos. The void of chaos was a barren land where not even birds would shit, while the void of order was influenced by the heavenly God of origin, and the differentiation between the two was very instinctive. However, even if there was an extreme situation, it would not be too surprising if life was born in the void of chaos. After all, it was the void, and anything could happen. Origin life was a life that was born against the rules of the void of chaos, and was the number one difficult life in the void. Asterisk cough cough, asterisk they could jump around. And in this respect, chaos life and origin life were probably the same. The chaotic void does exist, but it's not like what you think. Their existence in the chaotic void is much more than what you think. They are not as rare as the origin life forms. The origin life forms are the most difficult life forms to be born in the great Yuan realm. There are not many other life forms that could be compared to them. She shook her head lightly. Yin Nuoxing pointed at himself and asked, "What about me? You are the only existence in the quasi-void and origin derivative race. I can't judge the situation of this race. I can only use you as a special case for reference and observation. I can't talk about the whole race for the time being." "Then let's talk about something else." Yin Nuoxing shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. In short, his race was just an individual for the time being, an individual that was separated from the great Yuan realm. Unless there was another fellow that was essentially the same as him, he could forget about claiming to belong to any race. Is there really life in the primal chaos void? He had been to the void of chaos once or twice. That place was a barren land among barren lands. It could be said that no contact and no outsiders were allowed to enter the place. Although the life forms of order would not die immediately after they entered the place. But, well, it was just that the environment was not good. No one would want to see a huge pile of garbage in front of their house every day. Yes, that was the feeling that the void of chaos gave him. It was disgusting, but it did not mean that it would kill him immediately. She nodded slightly in response to his question. There are rare and peaceful places in the chaos void. They are located in the upper plane with the largest conceptual area in the chaos void. However, there are very few of them. They're like small villages that grow alongside oases in a vast desert. They are few in number, but they do exist. Yin Nuoxing nodded, then scratched her head and said, "Is it something mentioned in your diary when you went to the chaos in the 33rd era? Did you find something strange in the chaos? It seems to have mentioned an energy source, but it also seems to have something else, something like consciousness." The light on her body trembled slightly. "You saw it?" "No. Didn't you leave it for me to see?" She was stunned for a while and shook her head gently, causing Yin Nuoxing to be stunned for a few seconds before he heard her sigh faintly. "It was probably done by Laos or someone on purpose. When they knew that I wanted to leave something to you, they—" "Oh." Yin Nuoxing turned her head and stuck out her tongue. "Well, this is a prank between siblings." She waved her hand lightly, as if she was not too bothered by it. "Just as you thought, the energy source in the chaos void—" "Stop. Wait a minute. What is an energy source, Jing?" No one said it clearly. Yin Nuoxing quickly raised her hand to interrupt her. An energy source is a kind of self-gathering phenomenon born in the void. In layman's terms, an energy source is a movement caused by the birth of a quasi-void derivative. After that, it is permanently frozen in the movement of the precursor and will not continue to evolve, she explained softly. Yin thought for a while and understood. A quasi-void derivative was basically everything in the void. However, in the context of the void, it basically referred to the second-tier things born in the void, such as the world orb, or other strange things born directly from the void. So, it was something that was trying to evolve into a world orb, but the process was stuck. Was it caused by the energy of order and chaos, or something? The collision of the energy of order and chaos is one of the situations that caused such a situation. The real situation should be: the void's environment is affected on a large scale, causing the environment in an area to become unstable for a short period of time. If there is a world, orb, or some other void derivative that was about to be born in this area, its evolution will fail due to the unstable environment. A quasi-void derivative that failed to evolve should have been devoured and destroyed by the void itself. However, perhaps it already had a stable environment or a stable rule, so its existence was judged as completed by the void, and it could not be judged as a failed product. Therefore, an energy source appeared. It could not continue to evolve and was frozen in a situation where it only had energy, rules, and order. It could not continue to evolve, but it was still connected to the void. Therefore, it became a creation that could only swallow and spit out energy. We named it the energy source. Yin listened to the entire process of its birth and let out a long "oh." This requires a lot of coincidental opportunities. The birth of a world orb in the void only took an instant. The preparation might take a little time, but it basically did not take too long. The longest was a day, and the shortest was a minute or two of preparation. To make the environment tremble like a tablecloth when the world orb had evolved for a short distance in such a short period of time. It was a little difficult. No wonder this thing was so rare. Seeing his expression of realization, she continued, "The birth of energy sources in the void of chaos is not much different from this. However, the void of chaos itself tends to be unstable on a large scale. Such an environment makes it easy for energy sources to be born, and they are frequently born around the oasis. Therefore, based on the number of energy sources found, we could determine the size of the oasis found in the void of chaos. After passing through the frequent energy sources, we will find the cradle of life in the void of chaos." Chaotic life? You want to ask about their characteristics? She opened her mouth and saw him slowly nodding his head before she continued, "Opposed to order, innately opposed to them, just like them. However, we did not inherit too much of their characteristics, just like how the life forms in the void of order did not inherit everything from us. We only evolved the void of order into its shape and did not let our characteristics cover the void of this place. The life forms born in the void are just life forms born in the void. We are the same as them. They might not have thought that there would be life forms in the void of chaos, but even if they knew, they would not pay attention to it. That's one of the things I wanted to ask, but I'd like to say that I've never seen such a thing. I'll be more specific. I've never seen any chaos life forms in the order void. You see, the environment of the void of chaos isn't friendly to us, but order life forms could wander there, but chaos life forms. Apart from chaos concept forms, I don't think I've seen any other type of life forms wandering in the order void," Yin said. "That's because chaos beings cannot leave the chaotic void." She said softly, "The unique environment of the chaotic void created a unique life form like them. They themselves are the greatest shackles and limitations. They cannot live in an environment without chaotic order. Unlike order beings who have adaptability, they do not have such characteristics and can only live in the chaotic void. They could not even get close to the most turbulent areas of the chaotic void. Activities that originated from the chaotic void would also erase them." Yin thought for a while. She had a feeling that those chaos beings lived in places where storms raged. Yes, just like that dilapidated land where there were storm clouds all around, the chaos beings lived in the calm zone where the eye of the storm was the eye of the storm. The storms in all directions were their own kind and also a threat, a cradle and a limitation for them. As she spoke, she felt that it was the chaos version of the order beings. Order and chaos were opposites, and their characteristics were similar. Both sides could be killed by the forces they belonged to. Order killed order, chaos killed chaos. See, it was very appropriate. It was just that one side followed order, and the other side followed chaos, and the latter could not jump out of the chaotic environment. So even the chaotic void could give birth to life. So how could he be born that did not belong to order or chaos? This was a little unsure of what to say. The grand primordial realm had clearly divided the two sides, but he had to stand in the middle and be a nobody. I'm just a little conflicted, Yin Nuashing murmured. She caught a flicker of light from the corner of her eyes and turned her head. She turned her head and looked at him. Her body was flickering with light, as if she was curious about what he was conflicted about. She then muttered, I said, I was born without order, neither order nor chaos. It just feels weird. She suddenly said, no, it's not just that. It's not just that there's no order, it's that there's nothing. Nothing exists. You don't have any self-awareness, because in the beginning, you didn't recognize everything that existed in the void and the grand primordial realm. You didn't even know what you were. I guess I've been forgotten by the grand primordial realm. She immediately turned her head and looked at the pale space beside her for a while. Then she said, maybe it's because the commotion of your birth was too small, so you weren't noticed. Yin Nuashing, she suddenly sped up her speech as if she was trying to change the topic. But there's one thing that's very strange. Everything in the world, no matter what kind of strange life form it is, has its own self-awareness when it's born. It's normal if it's a little late to learn about it. The life form of the origin knows what it's born from, whether it's the consciousness, the soul, or the senses that it's born from will tell it. The yearning life form that was mentioned not long ago was born from thoughts, and it already knew what it was before it was formed. It's the same for other life forms that originated from the void, from the rules, and from the void. Only in your origin, there's no concept that can be used to determine what you are. This is also the main reason why you haven't been able to determine what you are for such a long time. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Sure enough, he couldn't figure out what he didn't know no matter how hard he tried, because this was a blind spot in his knowledge. He didn't know anything at all. No matter how hard he tried to trace back to the origin, he couldn't discover his real existence. In the end, he still had to rely on them for this matter. They knew a lot more things than he did. However, even they could only determine that he was a strange thing that originated from the origin. At present, his identity was still unknown, and there was no definite explanation. After all, he might be the only strange thing in the entire grand primordial realm. If he could, he really didn't want this special honor. They stood in this pale space. To him, this place was filled with things that he couldn't understand. He tried very hard to figure it out, but, well, his realm was not enough. Everything here was incomprehensible to him. She, on the other hand, was looking around very seriously. This was the reason why they didn't rush out. After all, there was still an hour left. Her main focus was on the big hole, although it didn't matter if she judged it or not. Yes, Yin Nuashing felt that there was no need to judge it. Since he existed in the previous era and had never seen them, it didn't need to be said who left this scar. It doesn't seem to be just the energy of chaos. And you? Yin Nuashing was stunned for a while. She turned her neck and made a strange sound. Can you explain it clearly? She looked at him for a while and said softly, this scar has been there for a long time. It has solidified with your passing at that time. There's still some things left behind when it was formed. It was a completely white scene. Yin Nuashing said that he couldn't see anything left on it. He could only continue to look at her with a numb and stupefied expression. He listened to her slowly, saying, other than the energy of the chaos concept body, it seems that our energy is still there. Yin Nuashing immediately let go, but he didn't succeed. He struggled for a while, but was still held by her. But this did not stop him from pulling an arm's length away. He quickly leaned back and put his other hand in front of his face as a block. I really did beat all of you at that time, and you can't wait to kill me, right? Theoretically speaking, it's impossible. She shook her head. Whether it's in theory or in reality, such a situation doesn't exist. You still remember what you said before. We have never met in the new era, even if the time is shifted to the era of chaos. We're just talking through time. You're just talking to some relics that can talk. Ah, she admitted it. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. I know what's going on. I remember all the conditions that you mentioned, but isn't this an unexpected situation has happened? Look at this scar that tells the history. It's really unbearable to look back on the past. It's fine if I was crushed to death by the chaos concept body. But if the truth is that you and the chaos concept body crush me to death together, I will resign immediately. I won't work for the people who kill me. I won't do it. Let go of me. Let go. I'll leave. Calm down. From our standpoint, we won't attack the life of order for no reason. I've already said that I might have been a dead man at that time. It's a matter of standpoint, you know? I might have flirted with both of you once, and then got crushed by you. Ouch. She reached out and knocked on his head. Seeing that he had calmed down, she whispered, Have you calmed down? Yin Nuashing pouted and muttered, I'm just going crazy. She looked at him for a while and made sure that he was not going crazy. Then she slowly responded, What happened at that time is a mystery to us. We definitely didn't meet. This is the only thing we can be sure of. So, if your scar has traces of both of us at the same time, it can only be because you were involved in the battle between us and them, and so, killing me. Ouch. Wait for me to finish. She sighed. What I'm saying is just a simple statement. In truth, we have ensured the safety of the worlds of order during our battles. Furthermore, under our deliberate control, it is impossible for any life form of order to die by our hands on the battlefield between order and chaos. Our indiscriminate attacks have the ability to distinguish between order and chaos, so we have intentionally avoided the life forms of order. If not for that, as long as we exist, no life form of order would be able to survive. You are the only one who hasn't had the time to add the ability to distinguish between order and order to the life forms of order that you are leading. Yin Nuashing. He was sweating profusely. I'm already prepared. Yes, I'm already prepared. This won't happen the next time we fight. It's the first time you try it. It's worth being vigilant and prone to accidents. I suggest you go out and test it a few times before using it as a whole. Yin Nuashing. That seems to be the case. She saw that he was speechless and changed the topic. Let's get back to the original topic. Looking at the entire battlefield between order and chaos, it is impossible for you to die at the hands of both of us and chaos at the same time. So, there's only one reason why you would be tainted by our energy. That is to say, the chaos concept body still managed to finish them off even when we were shielding them with our domains. Such a situation did happen in the 37th and 38th eras, and the entire battlefield could have been overrun even if it was under our protection at all times. It's very normal, and you might have, Yinuashing lowered his head and mumbled, You're not saying that just to scare me into going back to fight? There's no need. It's fine even if you declare that you will no longer participate in the war between order and chaos in this era. This war is just as you said. Fight if you can, retreat if you can't. No one has to fight to the death. There is no such thing as duty or obligation in this war. The only thing that can bind you is the reason that this matter is related to this person. That's right. To put it bluntly, it was a matter of life and death. Why don't you come up and help? Don't complain if the enemy is reduced to ashes when they arrive at your doorstep, because there's nothing you can do about it. That's what he said back then. Yin Nuashing stuck out her tongue. He was being shameless, and so was she. Both of them were shameless to each other, and they would pretend that nothing had happened. He knew that he would not give up, and she also knew that he would not give up just like that. Both of them had a tacit understanding. This stupid thing had already developed to this extent. If he said that he was going to give up in the next second, none of the people around him would believe it. The main thing was that he himself could not find a reason to give up just like that. For this reason to be valid, it would have to be attacked from the core, the source. If he did not destroy the obsession that he had persisted for 5 eras, he would not be able to talk about giving up. Let's go back. She pulled him forcefully and walked forward slowly. There's no more useful information here. Yin Nuoxing tried his best to walk side by side with her. He sighed. I know how I died back then, found a valid explanation, and confirmed what I might be. But after everything is over, I still don't know what I am. Quasi-void and primordial derivative. To be precise, I'm a primordial derivative, she replied softly. Ah, that's not what I'm talking about. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. I'm talking about something specific. You see, quasi-void and primordial derivative sound like a very vague description. You just said that it's something like a race, right? I want to know what I am specifically. She suddenly asked. There are hundreds of millions of such void derivatives. Can you accurately name all of them? I'm sure. I can't. Yin Nuoxing grimaced. There were countless things in the void. Who knew how many he could name? Whether or not he could recognize all of them was a problem. In such a situation, the primordial derivative, you, is a special case among special cases. You're not an experiment, and you don't exist in anyone's knowledge. Since that's the case, the first life form to discover you can name you. No, what I mean is, Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly. You see, quasi-void derivatives have all kinds of things, right? They're either life forms or objects. However, they're all quasi-void derivatives. In other words, they're all creations of the void. Then, I'm a creation of the primordial derivative. Is my original form a life form? Or am I transformed from an object? You idiot. Yin Nuoxing. I just said that to you. Nothing exists. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. So, in the beginning, She turned her head. You're an amorphous, unidentified object, a blurry cloud. You're in a state of chaos. You don't have an accurate appearance. Yin Nuoxing. Everything. So, she's saying that I'm nothing. He wanted to continue nagging, but as she pulled him forward, his eyes were suddenly covered by a bright light. The blinding light forced him to squint. Even if he forced his eyes open, he could only see a white light that filled his eyes. Only the tight feeling in his hands was real. He felt like he was wrapped in a bubble made of light. He was not walking forward. Instead, he was floating up bit by bit. He could feel the sunlight, and he seemed to see the sparkling surface of the sea. Wake up. The process of waking up gave him a different feeling every time. Sometimes he felt like he was walking toward a dazzling light, as if he had passed through a layer of light film. Most of the time, he felt like he was floating from the bottom of the sea. His body was light, but without exception, he could often see the dazzling light coming toward him. It was as if walking toward the light was the unified process of waking up. When he opened his eyes, the light was dim again. It was a wall engraved with complicated runes and marks. It seemed like she was still lying in the sanctuary of creation. As soon as he turned his head, he saw her sitting next to him and looking at him with a blank expression. She nodded at him. You're awake. There are still 12 minutes before the concept manifestation space collapses. It's a safe range. There's no need to worry. I'm not too worried. Oh, what are you doing? Yin Nuoxing sat up from the bed and saw the young man and the girl huddled together and muttering something. They were holding something in their hands as if they were taking notes. The young man waved the small notebook in his hand, taking notes of observation and investigation, writing a medical record for the patient. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. By the way, I would like to record this down. Congratulations to the Order Void for welcoming 10,000. I don't know, more than 100,000 races. They are named quasi-void and primordial derivatives. Currently, the members of the race are as follows. 1. Suggest that they be listed as endangered species and be observed closely. Also, urge them to give birth to 2 children to increase the population of their race. Sai, don't get too excited. I spent the entire morning writing this report. Looking at the young man running away with a sinister smile, Yin Nuoxing looked at her speechlessly. You should take care of them. I don't think there's much difference. She nodded slightly. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. Forget it. I don't want to talk to these guys anymore. I'd better see what the core of the world and the core of order have done to my body. Chapter 19:12. The core of order and the world core of the continent of origins. Aside from being on the same level, Howard did not know what else they had in common. However, these two things that did not seem to have anything in common lingered in his soul for a long time. After a couple of rounds, both of them announced that they were fusing. From the looks of it, the product of their fusion was nestled in his heart. It had turned into a transparent ball of light that radiated a pale golden light. Inside the ball of light was a crystal body with many neat spikes. It looked like there were more spikes than a sea urchin. Howard did not know if it was made up of dozens of diamond-shaped spikes. And then, well, that was it. It looked like the two of them were pieced together and changed slightly. Howard was the same as before. Basically, well, he could not tell what it was used for. It felt like this energy life form. Oh, now it was a derivative of nothingness and origin, was forcefully stuffed with something that looked like a heart. Based on how he used the world core of the continent of origins in the past, he just treated it as a tool that could release origin energy and origin rules. He forcefully released its energy to create an origin domain that was not an origin domain. Then, he would lock himself in with his enemy like a trapped beast. Yes, for the time being, that was the only function, and it was definitely one of the crudest functions. He definitely did not understand the essence of it, but he really did not know what it was for. It will take some time for the changes in your soul to manifest. Right now, you're only a projection of your body from the real world. If you want to see what changes have happened to them, you'll have to go back and sense them clearly. She looked at him, tossing her up and down, as if he wouldn't stop until he got something out of her, so she reminded him softly. So, what changes will happen after these two things fuse? Study it yourself. Yin Nuashing asked as he snatched the answer from her. This matter is indeed not easy to mention. It's not that I didn't want to remind you. She shook her head helplessly and reached out to poke his head. There is a huge gap between our understanding and yours. If we always answer your questions with our understanding and concepts, especially when it is about your own path, we will inadvertently cut off the other branches of your path. It is better to use your own understanding when it comes to your own path, even if your current understanding is completely different from the concepts you know in the future. Yin Nuashing pointed at her chest with a stupefied expression. This thing is obviously not something that came out of my own path from the very beginning, but now they are, from the moment they fused with your soul, they have become an inseparable part of your soul. They occupy a part of the root of your soul. You don't need to look carefully to see them, she said softly as she looked away at the storm cloud wall in the distance. Their appearance is unexpected, but no matter how unexpected, they are now a part of you. Your path has changed and needs to be rediscovered and corrected. So, we can't give you more understanding than guidance. Oh. Yin Nuashing reached out to scratch his head, and when he touched her hand, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he pretended not to care and scratched to the side twice. Then I will study it myself. That's good. As for guidance, it is actually very simple. Even if we don't mention it, you will find it soon enough. Try to use them to touch the things you are busy with now. Maybe there will be unexpected results. Yin Nuashing thought for a while and felt that she should be referring to the pile of scrap metal that they left behind and the source law that he had been thinking about for a long time. Well, although this guidance was not much different for not having it, but if she mentioned it, he might put these two things as the most important thing at the moment. That's not right. There were only these two important things in the first place. Well, let's change it to, he might immediately grab the product of the fusion and use it on these two things. It saved him some time. He could not wait to jump out and study them. Speaking of which, it had been 2 or 3 days since he was summoned. The matter this time was Yin Nuashing suddenly remembered something. Have you removed that thing from me? It has been removed in the sanctum of creation just now. Don't worry. It has not had time to affect your soul. She nodded gently. Yin Nuashing responded casually, then lowered his head slightly and fell into deep thought. He thought carefully about whether there was anything he hadn't said before coming in this time. It wasn't easy to make a trip to this place. This was considered a passive skill, and he could only come in after being summoned. He had to take advantage of the opportunity to talk to them face to face and explain everything clearly. After thinking carefully for a while, Yin Nuashing felt that he had indeed said everything that needed to be said. This time, apart from confirming a lot of his conjectures, proving that the enemy was far more complicated and troublesome than he imagined, and that the enemy had more power left behind by them. There might be 2 or 3 chaotic concept bodies on the other side. As he thought about it, he did not have the desire to continue fighting. No matter how hard he would not be able to penetrate the enemy's defense. This was really not something a human could do. Forget it. Now the things had come to this, it was impossible for him to give up just like that. Since he had already fought to this extent, he could only brace himself and continue fighting. He did not have the habit of giving up, although this habit would usually kill him. Sigh, who cares? Apart from these, I have a basic understanding of these matters. As for the in-depth understanding, well, that would take a long time, and I don't know where to start. Let's not worry about it for now. I won't be able to use it for the time being anyway. After thinking very hard and finding that there was nothing else to say, Yin Nuashing turned to look at her. Seems like there's nothing else? The matter that I summoned you for this time has been completed. Natsuya nodded. She had stripped away the foundation of her family's continent of the Broken Lands, and then dealt with the matter of the World Core and the Core of Order. She didn't have anything else to do this time. Although she had received a large amount of threatening information along the way, she felt that she should be able to deal with it. If there's anything else, she thought for a moment and felt that she should remind him, after the fusion of the Core of Order and the Heart of the World, the evolution of the Core of Order has changed again. The evolution of the Core of Order has already been completed when it fused with the Core of the World. However, the changes that should have happened are still sealed within the Core of Order. Just as I said, the evolution of the Core of Order has already been completed. Right now, to you? Yes, you should understand what I mean. Yin Nuashing nodded. To put it simply, their own awakening and evolution had been completed. The things that were supposed to happen did not happen. For example, the Core of Order had opened up into a domain, evolved into a void, or what the World Core was going to do when it woke up. In short, they did not move. They just stared at the words ready above their heads, waiting for him to make a move. Also, since their own evolution was completed, he could artificially change it a second time. It could be seen as him strengthening the Core of Order a second time. However, it would take a lot of effort to deal with the second strengthening of these two things. He could only wait and see what would happen. This should be the last reminder I can give you, right? He said. When he saw her nod, he said, "Oh, is it really okay this time?" She thought for a while. "It's okay for now. If there's anything unusual in the future, we will probably call you in again. If there's anything else that you want to discuss, we'll talk about it then." Then, Yin Nuashing blinked. He looked at her and said, "Then I'll be going now. I still have a lot of things to do here. I'm busy." She turned to look at him. She reached out and patted his head gently. She said in a soft voice, "Be careful. Do your best. The result is not something that can be obtained by forcing it." "Okay, I know." Yin Nuashing stuck his tongue out at her. He turned around, and his body disappeared into the air. He smiled helplessly and replied, "In short, I will do my best to clean up the mess you guys left behind. However, the more I clean up, the more complaints I will have. When you guys come back from the cycle of reincarnation, be prepared to listen to my complaints until the end of time. If the day comes when we meet again, let's talk there." She waved her hand and watched his back disappear bit by bit. When he completely disappeared into the air, she sighed softly. After a while, she suddenly turned her head. She saw the young man, and the girl had also come to the top of the palace. She said, "He just left." "Oh, we're watching." The young man shrugged. They looked at the place where the little one disappeared. There were still spots of colorful energy particles hovering in the air. They floated up into the sky and slowly dissipated. This time he left. "By the way, why do the two of you always say goodbye, as if it's the last time?" It's just a habit, she said softly. She looked up at the golden screen in the sky. The barrier between the broken land and the real world. The real world is ever-changing. We don't even know if this is the last time we'll see each other in a hurry. The time we meet in the real world is still far away. Reunion is an unpredictable variable. We could disappear at any time. Order could fall at any time. This farewell might be forever. No one can say for sure, so when it's time to say goodbye, it's best to say goodbye properly. After all, we are people who are truly separated by life and death. It's a rare sight. We don't know when we'll see each other again. Maybe there won't be a next time, sigh. The young man crossed his arms, shook his head, and sighed. That being said, I don't think there's a need to say goodbye so quickly. When he's about to charge into the underworld, he will definitely come here once. The girl said, spreading her hands. Oh, that's what I said last time. I thought that the next time I'll come here would be when the little one is about to go to war. Who knew that we would drag him here again? She looked at the sky for a while. Then, she suddenly turned and walked towards the palace. We have something to do, too. We? The young man and the others were stunned for a while. Then, they quickly followed up and said, what can we do? Or rather, what are we going to do? What else can we do? Roth, she said softly without looking back. Either find him or find a reason why he's not manifesting here. Ah, that fellow. It's time to do that. Although they did not know where to start, they did not know why Roth was the only one missing when everyone else was here. But didn't we put this matter aside before? Why are you suddenly in a hurry? They quickened their pace and followed her into the depths of the palace complex. Her momentum and pace were indeed a little menacing. In terms of creation, we need his power. We need it urgently, and need it urgently. We have to find him quickly. She said it without thinking. The young man and the others didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Well, she was worried for the little fellow. This fellow was indeed a little anxious. It was worth noting down in a small notebook, but she didn't say it out loud. Yes, she didn't. She didn't mention it to the little fellow. Then, she went to do it herself. Sigh, those two. One is stupid, the other is stupid and arrogant. As expected of those fellows whom he met a dozen eras earlier. Their personalities are quite similar. His consciousness was once again tainted by the light. It felt like he was repeatedly waking up. Not long after he woke up inside, he woke up here again. He was dreaming. If you were to count the 139th era, that would be a 3-layer dream. How interesting. And he could not tell which time he woke up. There was no need to think too much about it. The Dark Age was not over. How could he go back to the 139th era for no reason? Speaking of which, sometimes he wanted to go back to the 139th era to take a look. There was no other reason than that he suddenly missed his big family over there. Sigh, it seemed that he was getting old and was starting to become sentimental. Whenever he encountered something related to himself, he would want to look for his family's soft girl to stabilize his unstable soul. Although there were girls in this era as well, that was not what he meant. He just missed his big family over there a little. It was better to throw such unnecessary thoughts aside. Now he had to pull himself together. No, the more he tried to pull himself together, the more tired he was. He even wanted to find a coffin to lie in and cover himself up. All right. The time of escape only lasted for 1 or 2 breaths. Now he had to wake up and continue to play with his life. After playing with his life, he would rush to the front of the underworld and play with them. He struggled to open his eyes. The sky was still full of twinkling stars. The sound of the sea rolling up the waves echoed in his ears. The wind, accompanied by energy, kept blowing past his ears. It was quite noisy. If his consciousness and soul had not gone to another place, he would not have been able to sleep in the observer space. You're awake? A soft voice came from beside him. Yin Nuashing turned his head and saw the little angel sitting beside him. He was a little curious. This girl had been living in his spiritual world for a long time. She did not intend to go out unless there was something. Why are you out? I remember that you haven't taken the initiative to go out for a long time. Well, I have no choice. The little angel shrugged helplessly. She reached out and pulled him into her arms. Her jade-like hand gently stroked his face. Now, What the front line needs is to accumulate strength and military preparation. We are not in urgent need of strength to fight at the front line. I want to help you, but there is nothing I can do. I can only lie at home and come out when you need me. We and the others are busy. So, they asked me to come out and look after you. So I came out. Upon hearing that, Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly in his heart. He had forgotten one important thing. This girl was actually a professional support. Although she was also in the primeval realm, her combat ability was actually quite weak. She could be ranked at the bottom among them, which meant that she was only in the primeval realm. Moreover, they were busy with the matter related to the primeval god of origin. It was completely different from the path that the little angel had taken. She could not find the right path and the right situation. So, naturally, she could not help. Now that the study of the death mist and the abyss had come to an end, the path of risking her life was not suitable for this girl. After a while, all her paths were blocked, and this girl could only be passive and idle. The pure night sky projected by the observer dimension was filled with sparkling starlight. Energy ribbons danced along with the aurora, but they did not stop the starlight from falling from the sky. Ah, ribbons and auroras. It felt a bit like the strange scene he saw in the concept manifestation dimension. As expected, cognition and concepts all came from one's own eyes. However, he had not seen the sky in the observer dimension for a long time. When he first projected it, it took him more than 10 hours to decorate it. Now, he was only concerned with all kinds of big explosives in the observer dimension and did not look at the night sky. He felt that it was a bit of a waste. Looking at the starry sky that was dotted with infinite sparkling stars, accompanied by the sea breeze that danced wildly in his ears, the little angel gently hugging him, a pair of white wings that emitted a faint golden light and sprinkled golden embers in space wrapped around the two of them. This scene, how long had it been since he saw such a warm scene? Without thinking about anything, they just leaned against each other and stared blankly at the sky. How long had it been? 5 years? Speaking of which, if he continued to lie in the arms of the little angel, he felt that he would fall asleep again. No, he had to struggle and get up quickly to continue his work. But not to mention that this was a good time to stabilize his soul and spirit. Just looking at the little angel looking at him with such a soft gaze, as if she really cherished this time, he really did not want to interrupt her. As mentioned earlier, when this girl was passively idle, it was as if he had cast her aside. It could not be helped. When he was busy risking his life, he could not care about anything else. When he was rushing to his death, what else could he care about? All right, that was not a reason. That was a reason, but it was also not a reason. Regardless of whether it was a reason or not, he would just pretend that he was not busy right now. When he was stabilizing his emotions, soul, and spirit, he would take some time to accompany this girl, even if it was just for a short while. Phone. Yin Nuoxing, the person who ruined the atmosphere, was here. The two of them had just maintained the atmosphere for less than 5 minutes. When the little angel heard the shouts from afar, she immediately showed a slightly regretful expression. She sighed softly and pulled him up to stand up before the person came over. She gently kissed him on the lips and said softly, "All right, you have to get busy too. I'll go back first. Hey, wait, I have something to say. You should stay and listen." Yin Nuoxing grabbed the little angel, who was about to slip away and did not want to disturb their discussion. He pointed at himself and said, "It's something related to me. Although you can look at my memories later. Well, I just wanted to talk about it." The little angel listened and nodded. "All right, then I'll stand by the side. I won't disturb you." "What's there to disturb?" Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Just as he was about to say something, the person who had just shouted from afar had already rushed over with a roaring sound of energy. Seeing Hui and the others in a hurry, it was obvious that they had sensed that he had woken up and hurried over. Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Is it a bad time? Did I disturb you?" Feeling that the atmosphere between the two of them was a little warm, Hui hurriedly stopped, covered his mouth, looked at him and the little angel, and said with a smile, "Why don't we come back later and wait for the two of you to be warm. Yin Nuashing grinned and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. Why did you guys come over so quickly? We put his hands on his waist and said confidently, we left an energy beacon so that we could be notified as soon as you woke up. Then, we rushed over to receive the first-hand information. So, what did you talk about when you went in? Sui Feng and the others looked as if they could not wait, and were all ears. It seemed that they could not wait any longer. After all, no one was more excited than them when it came to information about the primordial god. They were also very curious about what Feng and the gods talked about. We talked about a few things. Only one of them was life-threatening. The other things were very life-threatening. At the mention of this, Yin Nuashing automatically switched to a state of mental exhaustion. Come on, if you want to listen, find something to sit on. I'm going to start talking. Don't scare yourselves to death. Taking a deep breath, Howrin spilled out all the important things he talked about during the 2 to 3 days of being observed, including his proven conjecture, the underworld, the soul, suppressing ring, them, and the chaos concept body. Basically, he just repeated everything, and he did not talk about the root of the problem. He picked the important things to talk about and did not repeat everything in detail. Even so, it took him a full 20 minutes to finish the long speech. After hearing that, as expected, everyone was stunned. The only one who could still move, other than the little angel, was Hui. At this moment, Huey's jaw looked like it was going to be dislocated. His gloomy face spoke of the storm that was raging in his heart. Looking at the others, including Sui Feng and the others, their faces were all dark, as if they had been poisoned for a long time and were about to die. Something happened to the soul subduing ring. Brother Lei was the first to speak. He was already stunned like a stone man. He pointed at himself with a horrified expression. Our place has been visited, and we didn't know about it. Yin Nuashing turned to the girl in white who was nicknamed Ours. She and the others acted as gatekeepers in the soul subduing ring. They had not heard anything unusual before. You didn't feel anything unusual? The girl in white was calm. She could not stay calm. Her expression changed a few times, and even her tone changed. Nothing unusual. We have been guarding it for more than a dozen eras. The soul-subduing ring has not reported to us that it has been invaded by the outside world. Yin Nuashing was not particularly surprised. It's not hard to understand. After all, it is a guy who has been stabbed by the heavenly god of origin. It is not hard to imagine that he could bypass the lock of the soul-subduing ring and the unlucky clone of the heavenly god of origin and directly pry open the warehouse and mess around inside. He spread his hands and sighed. In short, although it is a group of sneaky and difficult to deal with, they are currently suppressed by the people of the residence. So, we don't have to deal with them for the time being. What we need to deal with is still the underworld. However, it is the underworld that may have 6 or 7 staffs of origin. Other than that, there may be 1 or 2 chaotic conceptual bodies hiding there. So, the question is, how do we fight this battle? Everyone's face darkened. The soul-subduing ring had been ransacked, and the most important escape route was basically a group of unreliable guides and debris on the ground. When it was over, it was equivalent to strengthening the enemy. This was the extent of strengthening an entire elemental realm. 2 or 3 chaotic conceptual bodies and 7 or 8 staffs of origin. F*CK, just thinking about it gave them a headache. When the former was mentioned in the previous era, they were already having a headache. In this era, they were having a headache. They even suspected that they might have grown another head. God knows what to do. We can only take it one step at a time. We pressed his jaw back and grimaced for a while. Then, he looked at Feng with a heavy expression. So, what is the thing about yourself that you said? The little angel quickly pulled herself together. She had been waiting for this question for a while. About that, Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and raised her chin slightly. They said that they might have figured out what I am. To be more specific, they might have figured out what kind of race I am. My true form is still ambiguous, but it might not be far off. Even the name is just given. Everyone took a deep breath and looked at Yin Nuashing. She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. Have you heard of the derivative of nothingness in Origin? Everyone, how could they have heard of the name that the god of Origin had just given them? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.